This is a call to order the January 6, 2021 regular meeting of the Ducktown Council. And at this time, I'd like to ask Councilmember Rob Mooney if he'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Rob.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. This time I'd like to do a roll call of the council and the attorneys. This is Don Kingston, Mayor.
Monica Thibodeau, Mayor Pro Tem.
Rob Mooney, Council.
Sandy Whitten, Council.
Nancy Cavanis, Council.
John Leidy, Town Attorney.
Also with us tonight, we have Joe Hurd, the interim town manager, Lori Ackerman, our town clerk, Kay Nickens, our deputy town clerk, Chief Jeff Ackerman, Deputy Chief Trey Bachelet. I think on Zoom is Fire Chief Donna Black, and also our PAO, Christian Legner. Special welcome also to Lisa Murphy, partner in Johnson, Mazzell, Straub, and Murphy, will be presenting to us tonight. And also a special welcome to Bobby Otten, their county manager and county attorney. With that, we'll go to public comments. Do we have any, Christian?
I do not.
All right. So opening comments and closing comments. And please remind people they can put comments in during the meeting. Item number 3, the consent agenda this evening. It contains minutes from the November 4th, 2020 regular meeting, minutes from the November 18th, 2020 mid-month meeting, minutes from the November 19th, 2020 reconvened meeting, and a certain budget amendment. And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Any discussion of the motion on the floor? There being none, I'll take a roll call vote. Mayor votes aye. Mayor Pro Tem Thibodeau?
Aye.
Councilmember Mooney?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitman?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanis?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item number 4, some special presentations. I'd like to ask Chief Jeff Ackerman if he'd go to the podium.
All right, good evening, Mayor, members of council. It's my honor to introduce our 12th and final, for now, police officer, so we're now at full staff. Mitch is accompanied this evening by his lovely fiancee, Lexi, who Mitch proposed to just prior to Christmas. So,
Oh, congratulations.
pretty special thing for that. Officer Mitchell Ardinger comes to the Town of Duck Police Department with over 3 years of law enforcement experience, having worked in the Prince William County, Virginia Police Department. During that time, Officer Ardinger was assigned to patrol in the Woodbridge area outside of DC and a member of the part-time bike patrol team. Officer Ardinger attended Randolph-Macon College in Virginia, and he played 4 years of college football and graduated with a sociology degree. So extremely happy to have Mitch's talents here in Duck with us, and I think he's going to be a perfect fit with our crew. So welcome to the team, Mitch. I'd like to ask the town clerk to go ahead and swear you in, and then Lexi's going to pin the badge. Excuse me.
Did you hold it? I feel like I just did this. After I give the oath, say I will or I swear. I, Mitchell K. Ardinger, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the government thereof, that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state, not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States, that I will be alert and vigilant to enforce the criminal laws of this state, that I will not be influenced in any manner on account of personal bias or prejudice, and that I will faithfully and impartially execute the duties of my office as a law enforcement officer according to the best of my skills, abilities, and judgment, so help me God.
I swear. Not doing it right if you don't pick them.
Shirts are thick. Welcome.
Congratulations,
So
officer.
exciting.
Welcome aboard. I'm sure you're glad to come from Prince William County. I came from Fairfax County. It's good to get out of there.
Probably be on his way to the Capitol this evening if he wasn't here with us.
Yeah.
We're happy to have him here, safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Bobby Otten, our Dare County Manager and Town Attorney. He's going to talk about beach restaurant refunding. Welcome again, Bobby.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me here. I'm here to talk to you about beach nourishment and our funding thing. We from time to time have these conversations, and we're at a point now where some decisions have to be made at the county level, and so it's time to have another conversation. So I've been going around to each of the towns. I've been to a meeting every night this week, and I've got one more. I've got to go to Nags or to Kill Devil Hills on Monday. I think they meet, and we'll have talk with all of the towns. And so to sort of set the stage a little bit, we have a beach nourishment fund that's funded by our 2 cents occupancy tax, and that's been in place for a while. And that fund is designed to put sand on beaches in Dare County. And the goal of the county commissioners has always been and remains to put as much sand on the beaches as we can to keep all of our beaches open, all of our beaches looking good, all of our beaches attractive so that we can continue our economy, and because we all know that's the reason that we're all here. We also, and we and the towns have worked together for years doing this, and we all recognize that we have to work in this together because we can make a beautiful beach in Duck and forget to do another town or fail to do another town or another area in the county. And when the media comes, they're going to go to the place that's damaged and destroyed. They're not going to go to the beautiful beach and say what a success your program is. They're going to go somewhere else and say, look at the horrible beaches in Dare County. And that's detrimental to all the things that we need, to our tax base, to our economy and all that. So we've all worked hard to not let that happen. Over the years, we have funded programs in all of the towns, all of the oceanfront towns in the county. And we have done a project in Buxton. We have a beach nourishment model. I think we're in version 26G of that model. And we run that model often to be sure that we know where we are, we know where our funds are. That model projects out our funding for 10 years, but really we work in 5-year increments because that's typically what we say the life of our projects are. And we leverage those dollars as far as we can leverage them. So, you know, if we've got a $10 million project and we don't have $10 million up front, we may borrow 5 of it over 5 years on short term and then put the 5 up in cash so we can go ahead and do the project. And we've done that in conjunction with all of the towns to try to, again, leverage that fund as far as we can. The fund isn't and has never been sufficient to 100% fund all of the projects. And so each town and each community that has had a beach nourishment project has had to tax their community at some level in some way, and each town has done it a little different to generate the funds that they need to make up the difference between what the occupancy tax fund can fund or the beach nourishment fund can fund and what the project cost is. Nags Head did the first project, and when Nags Head did it, there had been no other projects, and frankly, at that time, there was no interest by any of the towns to do any projects. And so there was a pot of money that was sitting there. It had been sitting there for a while, and they asked to use some of that money to fund a portion of their project, and were allowed to do that. And It was a negotiated number. There was no magic in it. It wasn't some calculation. It was just, here's what we think we can do. Here's what's fair and all that. The Nags Head project was built, and I think, John, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the week that it was completed, we had a hurricane.
That's right.
And so, of course, the first thing we all did was get in the car and ride to the beach in Nags Head to see what happened. And the beach in Nags Head was beautiful. There was no water in the road. There were no houses damaged. The beach was still nice and flat. And everybody was like, wow, this is nice, this works. And I think that got the attention not only of Duck, but of the other towns, and said, well, maybe we need to be looking at this. And so the other towns began looking at projects. And so we said, okay, well, how do we fund these projects? And as we did that, it took, Don, I think maybe a year we talked about it between the mayors and the managers, trying to figure out how we could fund this that was an acceptable way to everybody. And there was no real formula we could apply. You couldn't do it by each town gets a certain number of dollars per cubic yard, or each town gets a certain percent of all that, because the tax bases were so dissimilar. The tax base of Duck dwarfs the tax base of Kitty Hawk. And if we were going to use any of those metrics, places like Kitty Hawk would never have a project because their tax base can't support that. And so for those communities, we had to add more money than maybe we did in, say, Duck or Kill Devil Hills, because their tax bases were large enough they could support a larger share of their projects. And so we worked through all that, and we came up with something that everybody understood and agreed on, and we funded the first round of projects. We took the funds that we had and we created a model for those funds, because everybody agreed, and we all understand even now, that there's no point in doing these projects and investing this money if in the future we're not going to have sufficient money to do the maintenance projects every 5 years that come along. So we have projected the fund out in those 5-year increments to be sure when the time for maintenance comes, which in this cycle is 2022, there's maintenance money in there to do the volumes on the beaches that we all anticipated as we began working through these projects. And so we still hold to that. We won't do any new projects or do anything that would impair our ability to do the future projects for where we've already committed these hundreds of millions of dollars, $100 million or more in investment. With that backdrop, we also have to maintain in the fund. I told you that we borrowed money on the short term in order to leverage those dollars. We have to make enough money in the fund to cover that debt service. And so we have a fund balance that we keep in the Beach Nourishment Fund at all times that would give us 1 year's coverage of that fund balance. The idea being that if we had a storm or something that happened in May or June and it wiped out a whole season, that debt payment's still coming due for that beach nourishment project, and we still have to pay it. And so we make sure we have that. And so two things we hold. We hold the debt service and we hold the future maintenance before we look at anything else. With all that said, currently there's about $8.5 million in the fund in excess that could be used for a project somewhere. And what has happened is we've had now demand in two areas for beach nourishment. One is in Southern Shores. They're looking to do a project in their town, similar to what Duck has done here. And Avon has got some problems that need to be addressed as well. Avon has two problems. One is they have, every time there's a storm, whether it's named or not, if it gets above certain wave heights and some certain wind velocities, they have water that covers the road on 158, making it impassable, which creates multitudes of problems for the people on Hatteras Island and the people that live in Avon. And secondly, their oceanfront is in dire need. They've got the ocean lapping in people's pools and backyards right now. And they are in desperate need to do something before they start losing houses. And so they've got a pretty critical situation there. And Southern Shore is just doing all they can do not to get in that situation by proactively doing some beach nourishment there. So we've got two projects competing for the $8.5 million, and that's not enough money to do either project or to do both projects. It would only cover maybe half of either one of them. And so we've been struggling since last summer trying to figure out how to fund these two projects that are needed. Again, the idea being we got to keep all of our beaches looking good, and how do we keep these two beaches looking good so that they're on par with the beaches in the other towns that have done projects? And then how do we do that without impairing each of the towns that have already done projects' ability to do their maintenance and keep their projects up to speed? And so we've been working on that since last summer, and we've struggled to find ways to do that. The Beach Nourishment Fund grows, but it doesn't grow sufficiently to cover those kind of costs. And so the growth in the fund's not going to do it. And so we look to other funding sources. And we've talked with our legislative delegation, and we've been to Raleigh, and we've done a lot of things trying to do something to create additional funding. And we've done that not just for Dare County, but the beach communities throughout the state have done that as well, because the issues we're facing are the same issues they're facing. And so we've worked to do that. To date, no one has been successful in getting a true beach nourishment recurring fund. There's some money given here or some money given there, but if it's not recurring money, while it's nice to get $1 million or $5 million, and it might help you do a project, what are you going to do in 5 years if that money's not recurring? Where are you going to get the maintenance, and have you thrown that money away if you don't have the ability to maintain it? And so there really hasn't been a plan at the state level to fund that as of now. So now we've got these two projects. Well, fortuitous for us, for the 30,000 foot view, if you will, maybe not so fortuitous for the towns. The state came out a couple of months ago and gave each town a grant of about $1.4 million. And that grant was to be used for beach nourishment. And it wasn't for any particular project or any particular thing. It was just something that you have to dedicate it to beach nourishment, but nothing else. And I don't know if there was a time frame on it or not, but it wasn't for a project that was in the works or not in the works. It was just for beach nourishment. With that said, what we did in looking at how to fund it, we were doing the calculations, and if the county then came in and reduced its funding to the town that we had in the model by that same $1.4 million, put the money that we reduced it by back in the fund, it created enough money in the fund through the cash and the borrowing that we can do with that amount of money, and with a significant tax increase down in Avon to cover some costs, plus whatever tax increase they're going to do in Southern Shores to cover their costs. We cobbled together a way to do those two projects. And if the towns who took the grant money that they got and backfilled the hole, if you will, that was created when the county reduces that money, they wind up with the same project that they thought they were going to get in July and August, the same amount of sand, the same everything, the same amount of money. It doesn't change anything for them for what everybody anticipated prior to receiving that grant. And so from the big picture perspective, it's doing exactly what we've projected everybody ought to be doing in 2022. It's keeping everybody's funding the same, the volumes are the same, and it allows these other two projects that are desperately needed to be done. And everybody has skin in the game as well. I don't know what Southern Shores' tax rate is going to be to cover what their costs are going to be. I'll tell you that in Avon, to make it work, on the ocean side, their taxes are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 cents. And in the rest of Avon that's not on the ocean side, they're looking at another like 10 cents in an MSD. And so they're going to pay a significant tax increase if this goes through. And we haven't talked to the people in Avon yet, and I'm sure there's people that aren't going to like it in Avon, no doubt. And so there's some more work to be done. But we've got stakeholders, and you all are one of them, and the towns are all stakeholders in this, and the people in Avon will be stakeholders in this. And so we wanted to have a conversation with you all about the plan that I've just described to you, to see if there are problems, something that we need to address, something that we missed, something so that as we go forward, we can continue to keep the beaches looking nice, your beaches looking nice, and everybody else's beaches looking nice. And if there are problems that this creates, then we need to talk about it and figure out a way to solve those problems. But with a limited fund, it was the only way to make these other projects viable. And so that's the direction that we're looking at moving forward. And I'm here tonight to just hear back, get some feedback from you all, ideas, thoughts, help us make sure we do this the right way. With that, I'll stop and answer any questions that you have and listen to your feedback.
Bobby, is there any chance that either project, Southern Shores or Avon, won't go forward? In your opinion? I mean, I know you can kind of control Avon, but.
I don't think there's any chance that Southern Shores isn't going to go forward. I think they're pretty well committed from what I can tell. They've got their funding plan in place, and from what I understand from them, they're ready. They just need money from us to do that. And so the question then becomes, what's going to happen in Avon, and is there enough will in Avon to pay those kind of taxes to get a project? And I don't know the answer to that yet. For some, it's going to be a good thing because it'll save them money on the oceanfront. From others, they're going to say that it's going to cost almost double their taxes, and that's not going to be palatable. And I don't really know how that's going to play out. So if the political will in Avon is not to do a project, then Avon, I guess, wouldn't get done.
If that was the case, then you would just take that 1.4 million and put it back into the fund?
If that was the case, if we didn't do Avon, or we didn't do, if we didn't do one or the other, we could use, well, no, that's not true. If we didn't do Avon, then we have enough money with the 8.5 to do Southern Shores. If we didn't do Southern Shores, we don't have enough money with just the 8.5 to do Avon without that significant tax increase.
But either way, would you want to recover that 1.4 million from each of the towns? I mean,
would we,
even if we only did one project?
If we didn't do Avon, we wouldn't need it. Or if we didn't do Southern Shores, we wouldn't need it. We could probably figure out how to do one project. The problem is we've got two. And so we're trying to figure out how to do two projects. And that's why we were looking at that reduction in funding.
The 1.4 that we got, are there any restrictions on that it has to stay in duck?
You have to ask Joe that. I don't know. Because we're not using your money. We're taking back our money.
Yeah.
Both of our money.
And that's what's going on. This is basically substituting. That grant would stay with us. The reduction would occur in the amount of money that, the county would reduce the amount of money they're giving us
We're
accordingly.
1.4 here.
Correct.
The only thing we're not
Correct.
getting is our
2.5.
2.5. We're not getting the money to reduce our MSDs for the people in the nourishment area. If we give them the money.
No, we'd be able to still reduce the
It wouldn't be by as much, I guess, might be the fair way to
Understand,
say.
you're not giving us your grant money. We don't
You're
have.
just reducing the money you're going to give us
Correct.
against our grant money.
Right. That's up to you how you replace it, but presumably that's how you would replace it.
I mean, basically, we're getting the same 2.5 million, just some of that's coming from us rather than the county.
Right.
Plus we have the FEMA, so the MSDs are still going to have a positive
So the
impact.
numbers that we projected are the same. It's just that we're using it from different sources.
Correct.
And you're getting to take back,
We don't need
that
to put,
much
we
money
don't
that
need to
we
put
got.
as much in because you got a grant that can cover some of what we were going to pay.
I have a question,
Oh, go ahead.
if you're satisfied, Sandy. Conceivably, we'll have the Southern Shores and Avon projects down the road. And I think if I understood you correctly, when you're doing the modeling and everything now, those two new projects would be part of the mix in terms of the ability to help renourish.
Yes.
So I'm a little concerned about, just down the road, how much we can spread those renourishment funds, but that's something we all have to kind of face together. I guess the question I had was, is it about 8 million a year that we're getting from the 2% on the occupancy?
So close, something like that, right?
About that. And and what I'm just inferring is that the Avon project costs a lot more than the Southern Shores project.
They're actually, no.
Oh, okay.
The Avon project as a standalone project would cost about the same as the Southern Shores project. But if we can get it in 2022 and couple it with our Buxton project, then we can save about $3 million, and that's what we're trying to do.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And let's see. Did the state, do you know if they gave 1.4 to other towns and other areas off the
believe
Outer
that they did.
Banks? So they were just sort of trying to say, here's some money, coastal
I think 9
towns.
communities, if I recall, got that grant, and ours were part of those 9.
And it was just, it was curious to me that it must be everybody that had a project probably. I mean, I guess I would feel really bad if I was one of those towns that had a project and didn't get 1.4.
It wasn't necessarily everybody who has a project coming up. It had more to do with who applied.
And you
There were
had
a
to
number of
apply, yeah.
communities to the mid and south part who didn't apply for whatever, they didn't have a need maybe, or weren't anticipating the
Great.
need for it in the immediate future, of other beach management plans that didn't require that. But it wasn't a requirement that you have a pending project, put it that way.
Okay, well,
But-
thank you for
But
clarifying.
in answer to your question about the model, the model with these 2 projects is projecting those maintenance costs in the model. And under the model, we can handle those maintenance costs in the fund going forward, just as we have modeled the maintenance costs for Duck or
Great.
the other towns.
So anybody who has a project gets kind of modeled in and
It's-
can
if it won't-
support.
If it would not fund it, if the model could handle the construction but couldn't handle the maintenance, then we wouldn't do the project. We're not going to invest multiple millions of dollars to let it go away because we can't model. Now, as with any model, you're using assumptions. Our assumptions are the assumptions that your consultants and the other town's consultants, some are the same, and our consultants all have given us for the cost to do nourishment, the projected cost. Doug Carter and his crowd have run those numbers, our investment numbers, all those things you do for growth and projected balances in the fund. And it works based on those. And they're pretty conservative assumptions, but nonetheless, if the assumptions turn out to be wrong and something happens, then obviously you can't guarantee that
Sure.
that's going to work. Yeah.
Well, I certainly appreciate the overview and the support that we're getting from Dare County on all of this coordination. And I mean, Duck certainly did benefit greatly from the grouping of the way you've handled it so far. I think is I just like to commend I'm a little concerned since I have your ear. I'll just say 2 things. Is the sourcing that's been nerve wracking in terms of where you get this, the sand itself. Basically, it doesn't make sense that there isn't a lot of sand out there, but the sand that works for us is a little concerning to me. And also just wanted to make sure you were aware of how successful our volunteer beach planting has been in Duck. And we have an amazing group of volunteers, and they're out there trying manually to hold down everything that we
Right.
put in, and as well as everything that Mother Nature has left for us. So
All of our goals are to have pretty beaches. Our goals are to leverage our dollars as far as we can to keep them that way. And anything we can do to help, anything that you do, I think we give you some money to do some of that sprigging so that you can do that. And
well, that'd be great. And I just want to say it's a great model. I know Kitty Hawk and other communities have done it, but I have to say that Sandy and I are both very involved in it, and the manual labor in it. It's great to at least try to do everything we can to preserve our beaches. And those plantings have been amazingly successful, I think. So just something to keep in mind if you ever want to spotlight on what Duck is doing and use it in other areas if you can get that kind of volunteer effort.
Thank you.
Bobby, what's the situation with Nags Head? I mean, I know they did Renourishment, but last I knew, Ben was talking about a little bit more. And what's happening with their 1.4?
Well, I met with them this morning and had the same conversation with them that we're having right now. They're on the model for a 2025 project. I know there's been some discussion about them wanting to change some of their dates, and which is fine. And depending on when and what they want to do, you know, we just rerun the model. If the model will support it and we can do what they want to do to help them, and it doesn't impact Duck or Kitty Hawk or Kill Devil Hills or Southern Shores or anywhere else where we've done projects, then there's no reason not to try to help them. We would love to try to help them. If on the other hand, there's not funding there to do it, or it's to the detriment of the other towns, then we probably wouldn't do that. So I don't know enough to know what they want or what they're going to do yet, but I've heard some discussion about them thinking that they may be able to change their dates and maybe save some future money. I don't know what it does to the cash flow that you need on the front end. So,
But their grant doesn't come into this scenario at all, correct?
their grant does.
You grabbing that too?
We're reducing. No, we're not grabbing their grant. You keep your grant. We are reducing the funding from all of the towns by 1.4 million.
Okay.
Mayor, NAGSAT also has some FEMA money that they're going to be awarded for a repair project from Hurricane Dorian, and they're going to have a workshop in 2 weeks to talk about how to coordinate the timing of the use of those funds. And so, although 2025 was the original projected date for the next project, there's some talk about moving it all the way up to 2022, depending on a number of other factors.
And from our perspective, if when you plug whatever is needed from the county into a 2022 model, if there's dollars there that can work because you're getting savings from your 28 project or 25 project that you're now postponing to 28, then you know that's going to work on the years that you're saving after 25, but you don't know what it's going to do until we run the model. Do you have enough cash up front to front all that money to get that savings 5 years from now? So I don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah. A related subject, and maybe you know this, but yesterday I talked to Kathleen Riley.
I'm sorry.
Yesterday I talked to Kathleen Riley, and maybe you're aware of this, but she wants to link up with the league with respect to lobbying for the continuing funding. And that's actually one of the goals of the league right now, or potentially one of the goals. So
well, we're all in. We're not in the league, but I'm a member, so
I know you are. I know you are. But I mean, I think it's the right thing to do, because I think the two lobbyists that she'll talk to at the league are very effective on capital and
I agree. I think
in the state. So
any help that the beach communities throughout the state can get to create that fund. We could get a fund that's recurring, similar to the Shallowcraft Fund. That would be a huge benefit to the beach communities.
It's probably one of the goals that's going to stand for the league this year. So, you know, if BIWA can affect that and also get in on that, that'll be good. What would you like from us? Would you like a vote of confidence, consensus? I hate to leave you hanging like.
Well, I guess I haven't seen anybody stand up and beat their shoe on the table and say, y'all are out of your minds. And so I'm taking that as, okay, you understand. I understand you had 1.4 million that you may have had other ideas to use, and now we're putting a kink in that. But on the other hand, we're doing what we think our job is to do, and that's to get sand on beaches throughout the county. And this is an opportunity to do that with really outdoing any harm to any of the towns that already have projects. And so, yeah, I mean, we weren't looking for you to vote to approve it or not approve it. We were more trying to have a conversation, and most importantly, to get feedback and be sure that if we did this, are we missing something? Is there something that we didn't know that's going to create some problem for Duck or any of the towns, so that we can address it on the front end? It's much easier to deal with now than to be under contract and find, oh my gosh, we all forgot this, and now how do we fix it? And that's always a problem. We don't want to be there. So.
Well, let me ask this question of council. Is there any objections or concerns with what the county has proposed with respect to our state grant?
No, I appreciate you taking the time to come to each town like this and give it a thorough, kind of looking at it individually at each town level so that the community at large can hear what you have to say and understand it a little bit more in depth. So thank you for taking the time.
If you go home and say, oh my gosh, I forgot to ask, pretty easy to get, call me and I'll be glad to talk to you about it, any of them.
You've explained it better to me than I understood it.
Okay, good.
Nancy, do you have any concerns or objections?
I don't. I appreciate Bobby coming and addressing us tonight. Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah. Bobby, I think you can say basically you got the support of the Ducktown Council to move forward. And I know we got a lot of planning to do and be a lot more work ahead, but we do appreciate you coming tonight and explaining to you. And
good. Thanks for having me. And again, our partnership has been really good and it'll continue to be so. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Bob.
good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Now we're going to move on to item number 5, old business items deferred from previous meetings. It's my pleasure to introduce Lisa Murphy from Johnson, Mazzell, Straub and Murphy, and presentation of our full year 2020 audit. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Hopefully, stuff's falling, so hopefully I won't lose it while I'm trying to talk to you. I'm here today to let you know that this year for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2020, we have issued our auditor's report, which was an unmodified opinion, which is the highest form of assurance that we as auditors provide. It is also the same opinion that you got last year. And the opinion is actually stated in on the second page of our report that states that the Town of Duck's financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. After the opinion letter is the management discussion and analysis letter. And this section provides a narrative and an analysis of the basic financial statements and the financial activities. This analysis was prepared by Joe, and I believe with Teresa's assistance, and it's very informative. It's supposed to be user-friendly. I highly recommend that you read it in order to be able to fully understand how the financial statements are laid out and to be able to get some of the, this is actually the only place in the statements where you get comparative information from the previous years. Once again, I recommend that you read that. So after that, the first part of the financial statements begin on page 14 and 15, and these are our exhibits, and they're considered part of the basic financial statements. So Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2 are, Exhibit 1 is the statement of net position, and this Exhibit 2 is the statement of activities, and these are considered government-wide financials, and they are on the full accrual basis, which means that they're more similar to that of the private sector's balance sheet and profit and loss, and that it shows both short-term and long-term obligations. And it goes down, and at the bottom, it provides the net position of the town, which at June 30 was $24,918,628. Of this amount, about 81% was actually kind of restricted in that it's investments in capital assets, net of debt, and then it's restricted by stabilization of state statute and our capital reserve fund. And that left an unrestricted fund balance of $4,599,759. So what that means is that our assets, our deferred inflows and resources exceeded our liabilities and deferred outflows to create this net position. Some of the biggest differences between the full accrual and the modified accrual, which the other exhibits are done, is this has the addition of the capital assets with depreciation, and it shows all our debts. In our financial statements, we do have some pension liabilities for our local government employers, ledgers, and then we have the Leo. Our total debt with all the pensions has added $848,000 to the town's debt with those particular obligations. For the ledgers, what we're picking up is the part that's potentially the unfunded portion at the state level. And I think I've mentioned in the past, North Carolina is one of the top states in the country with funding for their pension liabilities. However, they are still only at like 88.7%. So that's why we picked up some of those pension liabilities.
I'm sorry, Lisa, where do you show the pension liability? Is that on Exhibit 3?
Well, on Exhibit 1, if you
Oh,
look,
Exhibit 1, sorry.
you'll see, and it's kind of, when I say the 848, I'm netting together the deferred outflows of resources, which are our pension deferrals. I'm picking up the net pension obligations of the 991,000 for the ledgers, and then the Leo are the 429, and then I'm also adding the deferrals at the end. So like if you take all those together, that added a net of 848,000 to your debt.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
Thank you for explaining that.
And then also we have, as far as our general fund, we have a capital reserve fund, and that's shown separate down here at the bottom of $1,578,805. And that's our capital reserve fund that we're using to accumulate funds for our future capital projects and paying off the debt for the special obligation bonds and as part of the beach renourishment. That is decreased in the current year, mainly due to at the end of the year we encumbered some contracts for some repairs due to Dorian, and so that is part of why it went down this year. The next thing, we'll turn to the next statement, which is also on the full accrual, which is the statement of activities, and it shows that the change in net position was an actual increase of $1,276,149. So that means on the accrual basis, we actually increased our net position by that amount. After the exhibit 1 and 2, we come to the exhibits that are now more along on the modified accrual basis, which is really focused on the short-term spending. It doesn't necessarily have, if you'll notice, it doesn't have the capital assets, it doesn't have the debt and things on here. But as you come down to the end of the balance sheet, we have an unassigned fund balance. We have a fund balance of $8,577,291, of which is we have unassigned, which is $5,634,882, which is 59% of our general fund expenditures current year. So I think we have a minimum cash policy of striving for 75%, but this is still pretty strong and probably stronger than most communities. However, we do have much more potential need for use of our unassigned fund balances. At the bottom of this page, we have a reconciliation back to the full accrual, and here you can see that once again, the differences that I've pointed out are the capital assets, the liabilities for the pensions, and also for the debt. The next exhibit is our statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the general fund, which is really our only fund. We actually increased our fund balance by $81,656 and to have our ending fund balance of $8,577,291. Included in these numbers is the combined capital reserve fund that is combined in here. So on the next page, we have the same reconciliation back to the full accrual, which means that we're showing how these statements tie into the first two exhibits. The last exhibit is Exhibit 5. This is the exhibit that takes the previous one a little bit further in showing the budget to actual. It shows the original budget as it was adopted, and then it shows the final revised budget. And this is so that the reader of the financials can kind of have it at a glance, see what you started off thinking you were going to be doing and what you ended up doing. And this shows the budget to actuals in, summarization form. And if you look at the bottom of this statement, you'll see here where we break out the capital reserve from the general fund, and you can see the transactions that happened in that fund. So our general fund actually had an increase of $568,067, but our capital reserve fund had used $486,411, and that's where we came up with the $81,656 that was added to the fund balance of the general fund. So after the exhibits, which are more of a summarized version of the detail that you can find in the back, which is part of the schedules. But before that, we have the notes to the financial statements. We have it, the first part is the summary of significant accounting policies, which is generally will lay out the policies of the town. It's in more summary form, and it doesn't have much to do with numbers. And then later into the statements, we have more detailed notes, and that will help you find some of the detail of the information that is throughout the statements. So after that, we have the required supplementary information, which is all in relation to the pensions. And it's just giving you more like trend analysis of what all the pensions and how it's trended over the years. And then after that, the next section is the supplementary statements and schedules. These are the statements where you're going to see more detail, where the summarized portions are in the front by department. This gives the department detail so that you can look at it in a little more detail. And it shows the general fund, and then it has the capital reserve fund as statement 2. And then after that, schedules 3 and schedule 4 are the, schedules 1 and schedules 2 are the.
What page are you on, Lisa?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Running right through here. On page 53, we have the analysis of the current tax levy. And once again, the town of Doug has a very high rate of tax collections, which has helped in maintaining strong fund balance throughout the years. We have a 99.85% collection rate, which is actually a little bit less than it was last year, but still is extremely high compared to, I'm sure, many towns in the area. This year, we also had a compliance section where we issued reports on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters of an audit of financial statements performed in accordance to government auditing standards. And we had this report because in this year, we actually expended more than $100,000 in federal and state grant funds. So we went through and did more work in regards to those grants and looking at your internal controls. And we had no findings, so that's good as well. That was a very brief overview. If anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And if you come up with some at a later date, please let me know.
Lisa, this goes on to the local government commission. What key factors do they look at, which would be a red flag for us?
Well, the main things would be, they look at that percentage of unassigned fund balance as far as to general fund expenditures. Years ago, it used to be that they recommended 8%, and we're at 59%, and they might have even come up from that 8%. I do know that I've heard that there's several towns within the state that are really in critical shape, and so this is one of the metrics that they look at to see that everything's going good.
Yeah, because the coastal communities, they've always said that most coastal communities should have more than, obviously, even the 8%,
Yes.
but just having that ability to have a buffer in case, there's a problem.
Yes, and we're at 59%, and it's a little bit lower than the previous year by 1%. So,
Yeah,
we are paying off some special obligation bonds and those things. So that's helping, as the more we pay those off, of course, after talking with, listening to Bobby, I guess we'll be doing more soon. So, it's always, good to be able to do your planning in advance like you're doing, and working with the county as well. So I think that helps.
This year, there was a new requirement, but we had to have a second firm take a look. What did they have to look at? I know Teresa did it, but.
So what happens is with us with you now falling under the Yellow Book rules, they have more strict requirements in that we as auditors can't prepare the financial statements. Actually, Teresa did them. And so when we're looking at the financial statements, we're looking at something that's she prepared. And that's really part of the grant process that caused that.
So to clarify, you're saying that with the grant money that we got in excess of 100,000.
Right, we expended in excess of 100,000, and so that made us fall under the Yellow Book.
That's what triggers the extra scrutiny.
Yes.
Because, it's good to have as many people looking at it as possible, but, okay, great.
Yeah, so she actually prepared the report, and then we actually looked at, her disclosures. We did the audit and everything, but she's the one that wrote the report.
She prepared that special report
Well, no, she actually prepared the financial
Oh,
statements.
that's right. She prepared
and we did that report based on looking at additional stuff in the grants.
Okay. All right.
You understand that?
I had it backwards. I thought you guys just still did the audit and.
Well, we do the audit, but she writes the financial report, like all the numbers in here. And it's all coming down to where they're just trying to make more of a level of independence, having different people look at stuff and preparing it. So, in the past, because we were not under the Yellow Book, Chris could review what we were doing, and in relation with the local government commission, that was enough of an independence barrier. But under the Yellow Book, they have a little bit more scrutiny and more independence requirements.
That's good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It can't be worse. So
yeah.
Did this fiscal year include? Was this the third year of the payment on the special obligation bonds?
Yes. Yes.
So we're in the fourth year this year.
Yes. Yes. So I think, like at the end, I think we owed $2,578,000 is what was left at the end of this year. So we're coming down to the last.
And that's what the MSDs cover.
Right.
Right.
Nancy, you have any questions?
I don't. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Any further questions for Lisa?
I think we have a couple of new council members since you've come before us, and it's a lot to chew on, but I agree that the manager's discussion analysis is a great place to start. And you've always said that you're available
at any time.
24/7.
That's what I'm, maybe not 24/7, but I am available at really, if you have questions, I want you to understand it just as much as you want to understand it. And, but I definitely say that the management discussion and analysis, that was totally instituted so that the reader any layperson could really kind of get the flavor of how to read the statements and the highlights and how it's all comprised. So it is a good, at the time that they implemented it, we were like, oh my gosh, but it's been a very, I think, helpful for the average reader and even the sophisticated reader.
Yeah. And over just to review a little history, over the years, whoever that does the rules for accounting, Gatsby has created this to look a lot more like a normal layperson financial sheet.
Well, and what happened is before, and the statements that brought into this more with the management discussion and analysis, before that we were always only looking at short term. Like we never looked at we didn't pick up, we had the capital assets and we had the liabilities, but they were in separate account groups and they were never combined so that you could see in one statement truly anything that you enact, how it's going to affect the overall status of the town. And so because of those short sights of how it was being interpreted, that's when they came up with the government-wide statements, which is now on the full accrual. So that's where you're adding the capital assets. You're all putting it in one statement so you can come down to the true net position of the town as a whole. And that's what those first two state exhibits are.
That's great.
So, like I said, if anybody has any questions, I know it's hard to look at something like this when you're not used to seeing it on a regular basis and come up with your questions, but I am available to any one of y'all if you have questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a note too, that for the new council members especially, is when Lisa's doing the audit, she sits down with the mayor and a whole series of questions with respect to kind of an independent look at the financials of the town. So there is council input from that standpoint.
Good to know.
Yeah.
But if you want to give me input at any time, let me know. All right.
No more questions? Thank you very much, Lisa.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
There'll be a quiz later on this.
Yeah. That's a lot of good reading right there.
Let me catch up with where we are here. Going on to item number 6A, new business, the NCLM municipal advocacy goals. I'm going to turn this over to Joe in just a minute, but the league every year, every 2 years actually, as the new legislature goes in, really establishes goals that they want to pursue. And they put together a advocacy group, which consists of numerous members and board members. And they put that out, and then that goes up through a review process to the board of directors. The board of directors narrows that down. And then basically it goes back out to the membership is where we're at right now. And they would like to narrow that down to 17 goals. And each member city or town has a vote with respect to the advocacy goals as we move forward. So where we're at tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Joe now. We've got the set of goals in front of us from the league. They would like us to do two things. One, designate a voting member from the council, number one, and number two is we as a council need to, in fact, pare this down to 17 goals that we want to move forward with. With that, I'll turn over to you, Joe.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Kingston. I think he's done a good job of really summarizing the intent of this effort, what we're being asked to do today. One thing I do want to highlight in this regard is that you will have the same number of votes as the city of Charlotte in this effort. You know, so it's one community, one vote. So, you know, so don't think that your vote isn't counting for much as you involve yourselves in this. So you'll have a, you know, a good equal opportunity with every other community to identify the things that are most important to you. So as Mayor Kingston mentioned, there are two things that we're seeking to accomplish tonight. One is for the council to just recognize someone as your representative. That doesn't have to be a formal decision, but just someone who is technically responsible for submitting this information to the League of Municipalities. Secondly, you have a list of 17 goals that the League has come up with, and you are being asked to select up to 10 of those goals as the ones that you feel are most important to the town of Duck. So those are our two products we're trying to come up with at the end of this conversation this evening. You were provided with a staff report where I just took a look at the 17 goals and broke them down into 3 different categories based on their relevance to the town. And I'll just share with you that that's really how I looked at it. It's not to say that there's certain one of these goals that I may have put in a less relevant category. It doesn't mean it's not important. and not important to many communities in the state, but it appeared to me on my evaluation of it that that wasn't necessarily something that would directly benefit the town of Duck. So that's what I was looking at in making, in offering my opinion to the council members. You can take that for what it's worth. Certainly feel free to, you're not bound by any of that, of course, to substitute your own judgment for things that you think may be of greater importance. But ultimately, we need to come up with a list of no more than 10 that we're prioritizing.
Well, first, the easy part, I think I would like to nominate Mayor Kingston to be our delegate, or whatever you call it. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Our representative for Duck. He certainly has a great connection to the league, and it seems the obvious choice to me. So if I may make that motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Any further nominees? There being none, all in favor, please say aye. And I'm going to do a roll call vote. Mayor votes aye. Mayor Pro Tem Thibodeau?
Aye.
Councilmember Mooney?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitman?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Thank you. And I love the way you laid these out, by the way, Joe. I thought that was really helpful.
Yeah.
I kept looking at them thinking how I might want to shoot holes in what you came up with for the most relevant and everything that was. Anyway.
If you look at the very relevant, by the way, the second one there about the permanent adequate funding for local infrastructure needs really is what Bobby was talking about with respect to bylaw and trying to make sure that we had a reoccurring fund for beach nourishment. And that's in the very relevant there. Just to tie that to what Bobby was just talking about when he was here.
I guess we have to kind of, besides thinking about Duck, since we have such a big vote, we might think about the whole state too. What we have to say might matter. So.
Yeah, I had asked Joe to kind of help us along here because, just taking a look and going through the detail on all 17 is a lot of work. I like his first 7 as being relevant. And once again, it is relevant. I mean, what do we want to accomplish in the General Assembly? I think those 7 are pretty straightforward for us. Mm-hmm. I guess I would ask if anybody wants to take anything out of that list.
No, I thought that list seemed relevant to Duck.
Yeah. And to start the second part of that discussion then, the somewhat relevant, I looked at items number 2, 4, and 5 to round out the 10.
So that would be affordable housing, the grace period?
Yeah, apparently that's an issue from the standpoint of being able to do local declarations.
Oh.
And then the fifth one being process kind of payments for, but I mean, when you look at a lot of these others, they really don't much apply to us. Water and sewer systems.
So we really should just look at it with an eye for Duck and.
I would. I mean, this is what we want to be represented for as they go forward. With.
Okay. I mean,
with the
housing. Hello. Yes, I completely agree with the affordable housing. But helping any way we can to raise that issue. That's a critical issue on the Outer Banks and everywhere really.
Yes.
Starts with home security for people, a place to live.
Is there any objection?
I have a question about the water systems. I didn't know when I read that, I didn't know if that would sort of wrap into it our aging septic systems and the groundwater flooding and the ponding and the leaching of septic systems into our water areas. I didn't know if that kind of a priority would include those kind of problems that we seem to have when we have flooding, nuisance flooding.
I don't read it that way. I'll tell you what this is likely intended to address is that throughout our state, there's a pretty good number of little, what we call them service districts, that exist out there, that are affiliated, and sometimes affiliated with a local government, sometimes not necessarily, but some of these, in particularly rural areas, see real challenges for funding and keeping up the level of maintenance needed for their infrastructure. That is likely the main benefactor for that goal.
I think, Nancy, too, if you look at the attachment we got in the agenda package, there's detail below each one of these points.
Right, I saw that.
That kind of supports what Joe just said on that one.
Right. Well, I just read it, distressed water or sewer operations. I know that's not sewer, but that's why I asked the question, because I just didn't know if it would sort of wrap that into it. But I understand for the clarification. Thank you.
I thought of that too, and I thought of that, what NAG's Head did many years ago to try to raise septic awareness and make that a whole big thing. But I was thinking along the same lines, Nancy. I think that's a good question.
Well, if we agree on affordable housing, we agree on the first 7, we just need to take a look at the rest and pick 2 out of that. I mean, broadband is a big issue in the state, but certainly not an issue in the county or the towns here. The same with economic development, maybe more of a county issue.
I think in light of the fact that we stand to have our population grow after COVID, people working more remotely, that is an issue that needs to be addressed.
You're talking about the broadband?
Yeah.
Well, I think that coupled with the fact that we have, with that is a need throughout the state that would really benefit all the rural areas in the state. I could go along with the broadband.
Yeah.
I think it's so relevant to equality.
Especially if kids are going to be homeschooled or be schooled by the districts at home. Some people can't afford this. We need to, we got to figure it out.
Becomes a big issue as soon as you cross these bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I have some folks that work remotely from, say, Hertford, and it's sketchy, and that's not that far away. Yeah, I could go with adding broadband. Thank you.
Nancy, I've got 4 shaking of heads here on broadband. You okay with that?
I am.
All right. Okay.
But just one more.
One more.
I want to make sure that the public safety grant funding is in there.
Which bullet are you looking at?
Well, they're not numbered, so.
No, I know, but
Under Joe's summary.
in Joe's summary.
Maybe that's why I'm having a difficult time. I don't have that.
Yeah, I don't have that either. I don't have Joe's
Ensuring
summary.
state fund. Nancy, are you talking about ensuring state funding for any new state mandated benefits from municipal employees?
Let's see if I can. It says,
Proposal may focus on firefighter benefits.
yes,
It's ensure state funding of any new state mandated benefits for municipal employees.
yes.
Which one?
Increase public safety grant funding, expand allowable uses, improve policing, additional public safety grant funding, equitable policing, policing programs, and then mental health calls. And then there's another piece in there that calls out about,
Last bullet.
That's number 10, I believe. What she's referring to is number 10.
But on
The other one regarding benefits was number 9.
okay,
on your list, though, would it be the last one? Increase state funding to support public transportation development and operation?
No.
Which one would it be tied to on
We've
your
already,
list?
that was in our very relevant, that's the 5th bullet down, increase public safety grant funding and expand allowable uses. We already agreed
Yeah,
on that.
that was it's in the first
So
category.
we're already there.
So we have Nancy covered from
Okay,
that- on
yeah.
that one.
Yeah, I guess public transportation is not that relevant to what we do here.
Yeah. Vacant abandoned property is really not.
So we just need one more.
Yeah, 'cause I think the key for the public transportation, it's not that it's irrelevant or wouldn't be helpful to us, but if they ever establish a fund for something like that, significant fund, it's not going to the Outer Banks. It's going to go to your big urban areas that are
Yeah, like a metro.
that are constructing multi-billion-dollar projects for extensions of, their core
Transportation.
lines there that are serving hundreds of thousands of people. So
Yeah.
I don't think that one would, I didn't see much of a direct likely benefit to us.
Do we have any issue, Joe, with moving utility lines in the right of way and being charged back?
That's the one I'm on too. We just had one.
Yeah, that's true.
And we could have another one if we do the,
But it wasn't really a charge from DOT, though.
Are you talking about the big box we had to move for the sidewalk?
that and when moving the power lines out into the park.
But that was all Dominion Energy. I mean,
Oh,
But
that,
that's still, we could still get that for when we move down by Sunset. That will be a DOT project, won't it?
the DOT's not going to put any money into that, and so therefore they're saying do it at your own cost, right?
I'm just thinking of utilities.
that could be relevant.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly potential there for that.
Could be a big potential from what I'm seeing for numbers that they're throwing around now.
Yeah, we really got in trouble when they cut the line out front.
I'm seeing what they're doing to the residential people now. You got a power line that's in the way. They're talking $180,000 to move a pole.
Oh, yeah. Why don't we add that one?
Which one?
The power lines, the utility lines in the right of way,
Then the last one and the,
somewhat relevant. I mean,
Joe, let me ask you a question if you know the answer here. And I have no idea what number it is on yours because I don't have your summaries. It says ensure state funding for any new state mandated benefits for municipal employees.
I thought that was one we just did.
Yeah, we agreed on that one.
we've got that one covered.
We got that one covered.
That was one of the 7 initial.
Yeah, very relevant.
He sent us an email that you might have in your,
Yeah.
on December 30th. That had the, but that one is covered, for sure. I mean, you seem to have wanted to talk about the local emergency declarations. I just thought that the utility lines might mean a little more dollars and cents for us. So that's why it's a little more concrete.
Yeah.
So I would advocate just for the processes and improving the process and payment for moving utility lines. I mean, we don't have a lot of that affects us as a town per se, but the citizens may, as Sandy was saying. So I'll just put that one out on the table and see if anybody wants to make that our 10th.
Which one is it on the, on Joe's list?
It's the last one under subwent relevant on Joe's list. Somewhat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had that one checked before, so I'm okay with that.
How do you guys feel? I don't know how it relates to the one that I'm not looking at. I was just looking at Joe's list, so. Is everybody okay with maybe adding that one?
I'm okay with it.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt, and I'm sorry that this is coming at a disadvantage to a couple folks that don't have Joe's memo, but the 7 on the list of the very relevant, that we, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, that we adopt the 7 as our top 10 goals. We adopt the 7 on the list that were considered very relevant, and then we also add to that increase the state and federal funding for affordable housing, improving processes and payments for moving utility lines, and grant local governments the authority to build broadband infrastructure in order to partner with private providers, providing additional funding to help close the digital divide. So that would round us out to 10. That would be my motion.
All right, any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being done, we'll do a roll call vote. Mayor votes aye. Mayor Pro Tem Thibodeau?
Aye.
Councilmember Mooney?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitman?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. And I will work on getting registered to vote these with the league. Item number 7, items referred to in presentation of the town attorney. John?
Mayor Kingston, I have nothing other than the closed session items at the end of the agenda.
Thank you, sir. Item number 8, items referred to in presentation of the town manager. Joe?
All right, Council, I wanted to just start off with some of the permit activity from December. Got a few things highlighted here on the report that I wanted to bring up. If you recall, we did have a slightly down month last month in the report. Those would have been the figures from November after several strong months earlier in the year. December really picked up, and it has not stopped. We have, you can see right there in the highlighted on that top line, issued 40 permits, which was up 14% from last year, which was a big number last year. Looking, and those are the general building permits. Looking at the trade permits, that's plumbing, electric, mechanical, that type of thing. You can see it's actually up 57% from where we were last year on that. So overall, a 28% increase in the total number of permits for the month of December compared to last year. I'll touch on one thing as I move forward with this. We do have a couple areas where we have a little bit of cluster of activity here. Up in the Sanderling neighborhood, you can see a few things up in there, up in this area. We also have some in Carolina Dunes area in here, as well as down in the Snow Geese area, and there's neighborhoods just north of the research pier. As we drift down into the southern part of town, things are a little bit more spread out, no particular areas. But what that means is that we're seeing investment in all areas of the community throughout those neighborhoods to the south. So just highlighting a few of the things, the thing that stands out there is right at the top, we have 4 new construction permits. What I can tell you on that is I have another 4 that are sitting in the queue, 3 of which are on my desk awaiting review in January. So we are seeing just a boom in building. Sandy Cross ran some numbers, and after every year I've been here, we have issued either somewhere between 10 to 12 new construction permits. We may have had one year that was only 9, but it's been right in that range every year, very consistent. This year we issued 19. So whatever the reasons, I mean, we've all heard, I guess, some of the, the real estate market is it's a hot market right now for different reasons, but we are seeing that here in Duck as well. If you think about that, I know it's on a very, very modest scale compared to, some of our larger communities might issue that many in a day if we're talking about, a Charlotte or Raleigh. But for us, that's over a 70% or nearly a 70% increase in the number of permits that we issued during the year. Do have another, again, not just limited to these significant projects, again, new construction at 154 Schooner Ridge, 121 East Seahawk, 147 Old Duck Road, and 109 Quail Way. We also have number of very substantial renovation projects, 143 Old Duck Road, 118 Pelican Way, 1264 Duck Road, that is Sunset Grill, doing some renovations upstairs, 123 Waxwing, 147 Plover, 111 Plover, and 125 Fawn Court, as well as some work to one of the condo buildings in Sea Colony down there. So again, just a great amount of activity. We always say this is the time of year. Our department differs from the other, whereas police, fire, surf rescue are really, oftentimes stressed out during those peak summer months where they're really stretched to answer all of the calls they have. This is our time of year with the community development department. Everybody is trying to get their properties ready for the upcoming rental season. So this is when we see people coming in for these permits, trying to get these projects wrapped up. So that's really the key in that regard. So I'm going to move on to my second presentation. This is more project related. So just wanted to highlight, just have one slide for each of these, but ended up with a good number of slides in the end. Just highlighting some of the projects that the department and town are associated with. I'm sorry if that doesn't come out quite as clear as it does on this screen, but the first one is our Duck Trail improvement. Since we last met, this project has wrapped up. As the council is aware, we were able to dedicate an additional $100,000 in this fiscal year. So we spent $200,000 to construct nearly half a mile, 2,400 linear feet of concrete shared use path. There's a few little sections of that that are permeable, but a majority of it is just the straight, regular concrete. So that has been completed. All of that was up in the area adjoining the Sanderling neighborhood. We do have that area, as we've talked about before, we do hope to finish off that area in next year's budget. We do have a couple stretches remaining to connect the recent improvements all the way down to Oyster Catcher Lane. And that'll complete everything up there in the Sanderling area, which prior to that was the worst area that we had in town as far as the condition of the existing path.
Joe,
So,
could I ask do you mind
Sure.
if I ask a question? So remaining, and we'll get more in, I'm sure we'll get more into this at the retreat, but the remaining amount for that northern sidewalk is about the same amount of length? I know we can't do it by numbers because we don't know what the quotes will come in.
No, actually
Linear
we
feet?
have that almost exactly. So what we have left up there, we have 320 feet of regular concrete stretching south from where we had to stop for the budget this year. So we have another 320 feet of regular concrete, and then at that point it will shift to the permeable concrete. We have a stretch there where we do have more concerns with stormwater management, and the permeable concrete will at least help with that. And we do hope to be able to incorporate some other features to help with that as well. But all that being said, that's another little over 700 linear feet for that stretch. So overall, what we'll be constructing next year will be a little less than half of what we did
That's helpful.
this year.
Okay.
Now it will be, the cost will probably be, there's a couple reasons why we might not do as well. One of which, we're in an extremely competitive environment for the folks who do this type of work right now.
Right.
We may or may not have that same situation next year. The other thing is such a large percentage of what we'll be building will be the permeable concrete. There is additional cost associated with that. So we would anticipate that that on a per linear foot, the costs will probably be higher next year. But we also anticipate that we will be able to do that with a pretty typical budget that we have. No, we won't need to do $200,000 to accomplish what's remaining.
Because you had said we added 100,000, but we budgeted 200,000. So
Correct.
didn't we just budget
we've typically
200?
done a budget of 100,000.
Right. So we did.
And this year there was a lot of conversation during the budgeting process about adding that in.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the great thing is overall is that we've taken something that would have taken 3 years to construct, and we've been able to pull that into a 2-year time frame with the added benefit of getting a better price as a result of that.
Great.
Just the timing was very good for us to do that.
That was good.
So,
Joe, is there any plans to do some work south of Sanderling down to like Acorn Oak? Because those few blocks there's a lot of flooding there as well.
I'd be glad to. As a matter of fact, let me make a note of that. I think that's something we could maybe at least put a little bit of focus on, not a big lengthy discussion. We have as a staff for many years have a list of priorities. We have our engineers who work with us on this evaluate the entire trail and help us prioritize what stretches are in the worst condition. You know, it can be from root intrusion, it could just be wear and tear, it could be from water damage. We have a list of where we would look at next as far as priorities. And that's something we can share with the council at the retreat. I think that'll be something we can cover, in a few minutes at the retreat, spend a little more focused time. And then ultimately the decision on where we look at is up to the council. If you prioritize a certain area, it doesn't have to necessarily be the one that an engineer has identified. You can make that decision yourselves, of course, during that budget process. Okay. But let me make a note to do that. Moving on to the next one. We'd sent out, I believe we'd sent out an email regarding this, but we did go ahead and rebid or bid separately from the landscape contract, our contract for trash removal. What we're talking about there is not the pickup at everybody's house, but the public trash removal along in our town park, along the boardwalk, that type of thing. We obtained 3 bids for this. The low bidder on this project was CoinJock Lawn Care. As CoinJock also provides the landscape services in and around the town park, it also makes an awful lot of sense for us. So, you know, as far as coordinating with them, I think that's probably one of the reasons why they were able to come in with a low bid, is that they're already here. They don't have to come up here to do this as a separate job as opposed to some of the other bidders. So we are doing that. As part of that, we are consolidating some of our trash cans, the big bellies, that's what we call the things that we have up here, in or closer to the town park as well. So that'll help make that a little more efficient process. The other contracts that were recently awarded, as council's aware, CoinJock Lawn Care for the town park here. So this year, as of January 1st, these contracts are now in place. CoinJock also has the Duck Trail maintenance north and south of the village. Then Caribbean Landscaping has the maintenance through Duck Village on each side, the areas adjoining the sidewalks, that type of thing. The little landscaped areas associated with that project. So you may have noticed they have started. Caribbean is in town, has been this week, and doing their initial cleaning, you know, getting rid of the leaves and the weeds and trimming back where necessary some of those grasses there. Project we've got coming up that you will see. I don't think anybody will be able to miss this one while it's occurring. We do have a bank. We've got it circled there in red on this photograph. Just an area where you have an existing bulkhead and higher bank. As you pull out, where that red truck is a great example. Just great that we have a picture of showing the issue right there. You see how far out the nose of that truck has to be. I mean, he is literally right on the edge of the travel lane in order to see around that. It's hard to get a perspective of it if you're not sitting right there. In order to see what's happening, what's coming from the north, so that he can pull out. If he's making a left turn, he needs to be able to see that. It is problematic presently, and we're able to put aside, this will not be a very expensive project. It's less than $2,000 for this fix, but we will be, again, we did a bid process. Ben Vorndren was the low bidder on that, and we're awarding him that contract. The town is in the process of obtaining an NCDOT encroachment permit for the work, while it's just a temporary encroachment permit to work in that area, since it is in the DOT right-of-way.
He's gonna reduce the hill?
Correct. We're going to be we're removing the bulkhead, bringing the hill, and we're sloping the whole thing down. So it's sort of going to just kind of slide off and down. There will be 2 trees removed as part of that project right there. But that's one that's a public safety issue that we're trying to address. And again, not a great expense. So we were glad the bids came in very good on that.
This is just a little off topic, but it reminds me of a few other complaints I've heard over the years regarding visibility as you're exiting a street.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking particularly of Osprey Ridge, where you come out and you've got, and you might feel it a little bit in Tuckahoe, I'm not sure, but where it's a real curve. I mean, there's really nothing you can do other than maybe, and this is one thing that someone said would be like to install a mirror so that you could have one of those, like you see sometimes in parking garages across the street, where you can look, have a little bit of one of those thing so you can see what's going on. But that to me seems, I just want to put it on your radar because there are more streets on the, that folks are going at a fairly good clip and they have to sort of nose out in order to see if anything's coming, and amazingly, we haven't had any accidents, but it can be a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, Bias Shores West would be another good candidate for that.
Yeah, there's quite a few that if you go to pull out, that the homeowners associations should trim back some of their shrubbery or their trees so you can see to get around.
Yeah, some of it is just road, and I know in Sanderling, there's a few spots that are, that are.
Tuckahoe's one of them
you have to
coming
come
north,
out.
traffic coming north to pull out.
Yeah, and the town has done that either directly or working with NCDOT, and the ones that we've identified as being in the public rights of way. We've had projects where we've had, in the past it's been coin jock, just going and trimming out at some corners and things like, sometimes it's something that a private owner has planted in the public right of way that needed to be trimmed back or removed. But we have done some things like that, and we'll certainly continue to do that because obviously that's an important, public safety is it,
Joe,
a very important thing.
Can you petition DOT to put some signs up, caution vehicles entering the roadway, something like that, just to make people aware that they may come around the curve and find a car coming out?
We can adopt different options like that.
Joe, if I could ask.
Put up signs that it has to be done by DOT.
I think it has to be done.
If it's in their right of way, you need to get their approval. That's it. Even we have to do that. So that's it.
Joe, I had a question about back to the project at the Four Seasons area. And you said that some of the trees would have to be removed. Those trees, I know that spot pretty well. Are those trees there, some of them are quite substantial. Are you talking about some of the substantial trees, or are you talking more the lower shrub trees?
Now, one of them's quite substantial. There's a holly tree that's probably just a couple feet, maybe, I would guess probably maybe 3 feet behind the bulkhead. That is part of the visibility issue. And as we grade out that hill, that is one that's going to have to go. And then there's another tree up closer to the one that's closest to the intersection, that's not in as good a shape, that would also be removed as part of it. So there would be 2 trees. The holly is a very substantial tree, but
it's beautiful. Yeah, too bad.
All right, moving on, and hey, maybe that was a good segue there from trees to trees. We did want to make the council and community aware. We are once again entering in our Christmas tree recycling, a partnership we have with our Boy Scout Troop 117. It's a fundraiser for them, but also substantially reduces the cost for the town for some of our dune stabilization efforts. Just to let you know, the numbers we're looking at this year, for 750 trees, if we're able to put that many on, that'll be $6,750 that we would pay them for that. The cost that we would incur if we were instead looking at sand fencing, that would be the alternative, would be $37,500. So it's a savings of over $30,000 to the town by using some of these and recycling these trees that have outlived their use. So it's kind of, we look at it as a win-win, and helping out a local organization in the process, and they are helping out us. So a lot of good going on with this. They're originally looking at doing this project this Saturday. However, the weather is not looking very good for that right now. So I think there's probably a higher likelihood they're going to be looking at the following week, maybe the 15th, as being the week that they do the project. But just so you're aware of that, they'll be out on the beach.
Did you say which area is it where we have the, where our Nourishment project is? Do you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Okay, thanks.
exactly.
I thought you said
Exactly.
that, sorry.
I'm sorry. All right, another project we've talked about a little. This is not the area, this is just an example of what this might look like when it's all said and done. But we do have our rain garden project. We have the bids out on that. They're going to come in on January the 20th is the bid deadline. We have obtained a $2,000 grant that may grow slightly from the Dare County Soil and Water Conservation District. That'll help support this grant. But this will be going in that area just south of the entrance to the town park there, where we have a lot of standing water when we have heavier rains. It'll get rid of that water, bring it off of the road, off of the sidewalk in that area, and bring it in here with a nice, attractive appearance, way to get that water out there. This will be an area that's dry 96, 97% of the time. But when we do have those heavy rains, it would fill in and look something like this with that water. And eventually all that water goes out toward the back, toward the sound, but it's filtered by a lot of the plants that we'll be using.
Joe, what is the budget for that project?
We're talking it's a 4-digit number, likely. We don't have the bids yet, so I don't have an exact answer for that until we get those in, but we're not anticipating this being something that's really all that.
So you're talking less than 10,000?
Correct. We've talked before, just wanted to give you an update on our BRIC grant with the coastal resiliency projects, living shoreline, sidewalk bike lane, and Highway 12 elevation. I think we sent the summary of the grant proposal that was submitted to the state based on as they got into more detail, our engineers with VHB ended up with a little higher project cost. Most of that higher cost we have put into the grant request. So we're now requesting a $1.6 million grant that would be matched again by other grants we've already have committed to us, as well as the town. Town contribution was right at about $240,000 for that. We do have a meeting tomorrow with the state officials who are the gatekeepers for this. So before it moves on to FEMA, they are going to come back with us. We're going to have a conversation. Sandy Cross and I and a couple representatives from VHB will be talking with them. They will advise us on ways to make our grant application stronger. And then we'll take it from there, and it will be officially submitted to FEMA January 29th. Is the deadline for that it goes through the state and on to FEMA. The decision, again, will not occur until sometime around the middle of 2021. We don't have an exact date there, but we'll have some more conversation about this project and other engineering that might be necessary before we have a grant commitment. So we'll need to have some discussions about that moving forward over the next few months.
When you say we, are you talking us?
We, the council and
The
staff.
collective
and-
we,
That's right, that's right.
the royal we. Sorry. I wasn't sure if it was you and VHB.
We have the other grant that we've talked about before. This one has a deadline of next Friday. This is the NCORE is the name of the office there, but it's a Resilient Coastal Communities Grant. This is the one we've talked about as being the phased grant. We have an assessment, then a study, and then implementation. And there's different pots of money each year for those things. But in order to get the latter phases, the money that we would be looking at for potentially a stormwater management study for the neighborhoods, and then implementation money, we have to be in on the ground floor for the first 2 phases. So even though we've already completed a vulnerability assessment, we are applying for this. Had a really good meeting this afternoon with Christian Legner and Sandy Cross, where we brainstormed, and we think we're going to have a very good comprehensive proposal for them that should be well received. But that'll be submitted by January the 15th.
Busy time.
So again, on that, the total amount with the different phases, the way they have it set up presently, could be as much as $170,000. There is not a match requirement of any kind on this grant. So in other words, the town does not have to put up any money. If as we move forward, it's determined that that would be beneficial. There are some grants where the more you put up, the better your odds of getting it are. They like to see some skin in the game, as the saying goes. That's not the case on this, but if that's the case moving forward, we'll certainly let you know that. But otherwise, at this point, the way it's set up, we would not be required to have any grant. So there's really no risk to the town in pursuing this one. Last one I have is something that came up quickly. Not a real large grant here, but the Division of Coastal Management has identified for communities that are looking at beach nourishment, one of the issues that many have been facing has to do with we'll call it the compatibility of the sand with what's on their beach right now and what's out there in the ocean that they're going to be pulling from. And they actually found at least a little bit of money to offer these grants to communities who are looking at projects to do some sediment sampling. We're looking at it. It's just I've been working with CPE, Coastal Protection Engineering. It would be a little bit less than $6,000 that we would be requesting for this. But this is something that we can use directly to go into the project we're designing right now. These can be additional studies, and this would pay for those fully. Things that CP would be doing for us anyway. So it's reduced the cost of that project by about $6,000 if we're able to get this. So again, no match is necessary on the town's part. So we're looking at submitting this. The deadline is the 29th. Ken Wilson with CPE gave me the last pieces. So I anticipate this will actually be submitted more than likely this week, if not next week, well within the deadline moving forward. So again, a small thing, but something we're pursuing to help minimize the cost to the town. And finally, just a quick update on beach renourishment. This is a very important time in the life of this project right now. We will be submitting the permits to the state this month. So that's going to be occurring really within a couple of weeks as far as moving forward. The federal permits have been in there because that takes a year and a half to get through all of that. But the state permits take up approximately 6 months. So we're looking at getting them in now so those permits can be issued by June is our target. And then we would be able to bid the project July or August. And again, that would be this year. And then the companies, the way that they schedule everything is kind of a year out. So they would begin construction then. Our target would be summer 2022 for construction of the beach renourishment project. The significant thing we're working on right now that I do want to make the council aware of is that the staff is communicating with 3 different neighborhood associations, talking with them about whether they're willing to grant access easements. It would be a temporary easement for construction during the project for where the company working here in Duck would mobilize and demobilize, bring once they get through that 2 or 3 day period where they get all those pipes out on the beach and all the heavy equipment, unless there's a major storm, that stuff all stays on the beach. You know, we don't really have to, it doesn't come and go like that unless there's a storm and they have to demobilize. So after those first 2 or 3 days, and then at the end of the project, you have the demobilization in the same amount of time. Really what the communities are looking at is you've got some coming and going. You know, they have different shifts of workers, and you know, they're arriving, they'll shuttle them out onto the beach, wherever it is that they're working, north or south. And then they'll have some minimal storage there. You know, they might have a storage unit, they might even have a dumpster there or something like that. And so we need those kind of staging areas as well as an access point. We had identified 3 neighborhoods that had an access that at least was potentially wide enough to accommodate what they need. It has to be at least 15 feet in width, preferably more than that. We certainly wouldn't want them running and hitting a building with anything or something like that. So anyway, we're in the process of talking with these neighborhoods. If they are interested in this, we will put them on that permit as a potential site, and then we would continue negotiating with them. The Corps of Engineer property is a fallback, but they've made it clear that it's not ideal for them to allow that.
That
You
was
know, we
my
had to
question.
ask. We were actually turned down initially the first time we asked last time, and then we were able to work it out, but it was just a lot of red tape and a lot of expense with the Corps. And we would prefer that if we need to have some expense, that it go to a neighborhood if they're willing. You know, we understand there's going to be a little bit of, you know, during that 30, 45 day period, you know, when the project is in duck, there's going to be some activity that they're going to see. But if they're willing to put up with that, you know, we would rather put that money toward them. You know, maybe they can repave a road, or, you know, we would repair any damage, of course. That's
Right.
But even beyond that, there could be a contribution made that they could use for things in their community. And we'd rather see it go to them than just for a temporary, than us constructing a half-mile long temporary wooden road through the Corps property. So just so you're aware, those discussions are going on with 3 neighborhoods, Sea Ridge, Sound Sea Village, and Port Trinity. And we'll see where they're at. If they're not interested, then we'll move on to the other options. That's all I had for you this evening.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes, sir.
No, I said thank you.
Oh, okay, okay.
I do, can I just ask quickly on that access issue? Is that required to show where we're going to be able to get on the beach when you go for the permitting?
It is.
It
Now,
is,
we can give them more options and not end up using them. And that's what we've told the association, just really,
Okay.
at this moment, all we're asking you for is what information do you need from us to feel like you're making an educated decision? You know, we don't, you know, we want them to be comfortable with the decision. And secondly, we need to know whether you are okay with us putting this location on that permit. It doesn't commit them to any, just because it's on the permit, it doesn't mean anything. It just means it's an option for us. If it's not on the permit, and we have to go back, and then we have to go revise, we have to go through a whole rigmarole to revise the permit, and we don't want to do that. So we would like to identify the ones where if they're willing to talk about it, delve a little deeper, we'd like for them to okay us to put it on the permit, and then we can always remove it or not use it. We're going to put the Corps on there, even though we don't have any commitment from them at this point either. But we know that that's an option that we can look at.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. That's bringing back memories.
All right. Chief Ackerman, would you like to up here next?
Joe and I made a pact before we started tonight. He was going to go really long. I'm going to go about 5 minutes. It was balancing one. I have, December tends to be a downturn for us in terms of activity. So I've really put my focus on preparing for the retreat this year. So I'm going to do a pretty brief overview this evening and just kind of let you know what we've done. As I said, winter's arrived, but the work certainly hasn't stopped. We've been able to resume our off-season property check program. We kind of had put that on hold because we still had quite a few folks in town. And then also we weren't back to full staff. So now I'm happy that that's back on track, and they're already out there finding open doors. So very proactive program that we have. We continue to put substantial work, policy work. As Monica says, we're the only people excited about writing policy. I don't think Missy is anymore because everything I write, she's got to edit it. So I think she's tired of reading. But we have made substantial headway on that project, and I think we're well ahead of schedule where we wanted to be. So looking forward to getting that risk review done. We got all the all the position description questionnaires for the MAPS group done, and all those are going to be turned over tomorrow, a day before the deadline, to get that process going. We got Officer Davis and Kuhar on board. Officer Kuhar is already out of training, so made exceptional progress there. Officer Davis should be finished up this weekend. So just in time for them to begin BLET next week. So, but things are progressing quickly. They're really catching on and really proving to be great members of our team and great fits. Put a lot of work in December, and we'll continue this through January, getting prepared for CIP and then our 2020 budget request. So last thing we did was get our final checkoffs done for all the mandatory training that we had to complete for 2020. Just wanted to go over quickly what my goals are going to be for the retreat, and welcome any input that any of you have. I ask you to please, if there's something you'd like me to cover specifically or data you'd like to see, to please reach out to me and let me know about that so I can get that prepared. But my focus essentially is going to be where we're going from here. I'm not going to plan to spend a lot of time on 2020. It was a tough year for a million different reasons, but more interested in looking forward and getting some positive things done. I'm going to come forward with some measurable goals for success over the next year, and then a prioritization of the budget requests that plan to bring forward this year, and then some targeted data that will support those requests. And then we've also done a lot of work to come up with some creative options of how we can make these budget requests fit into what might be available to fund them. So again, if there's anything you'd like me to specifically cover or address or bring back data, please let me know. We finally turned the corner in December, and we're on the uptick. So we were 10% up in call volume in December. We finished about 18% down for the year, which is actually a little bit lower than I anticipated. With the staffing issues and then COVID, that actually, I think to me, it speaks that our volume, when things did pick up, were good. So I think that's going to continue right into 2021. Traffic enforcement, of course, is increasing because we've got the staffing now. So more of that. Traditionally, we don't have a lot of vehicle crashes in the winter, so that's down. Business checks are up. We're putting a big focus on being in our neighborhoods, being in our business district as we turn towards winter. And then we're starting to see more extra patrol requests from folks as they go out of town. And then we had two arrests, one of which was a significant felony arrest. So happy to see that. Radar speed sign data, again, it shows that our volume's beginning to go down for the year, but there's still an awful lot of cars coming through Duck every day. And then we've also, if you've had an opportunity to look at the website, we now have places on there for all this vehicle volume data from both the LPR and the radar signs on there available. So I've also included it in the PowerPoints, and we've put these on the website for the public to access as well. Just wanted to take a minute to talk about, this quote really speaks to me. It was said by Chris Crossgrove, who runs the Officer Down Memorial Program. When a police officer is killed, it's not an agency that loses an officer, it's an entire nation. We had a 105% increase in line of duty deaths from 2019. We lost 304 officers this past year. And the leading cause of death was COVID-19, followed by gunfire this year. Initially, the reports are showing 186 officers died from COVID-19. We expect that number is going to go up significantly as some of these are processed. There's a discussion that it may be over 400 officers succumb to COVID. So we really think about our folks that are working in correctional institutions. They're really, they've probably been impacted the hardest in the criminal justice community. So it's not made to be a somber thing. We just want to remember those folks that they went out there and did their job, as well as all our other public safety partners and doctors, nurses, and everyone else. Just for all the negative we're seeing in the world, it's really refreshing to me to see how many folks are out there helping other people. And then just wanted to highlight, take the focus off me, put the focus back on the team. So my final slide every month will be our guys in action. So this, of course, is John Gilreath and Officer Davis there, and you'll notice it's like the gentle giant standing above poor Jeremy. I saw them on a traffic stop this morning. They were next to one of those big jacked up pickup trucks, and John's up at the top and Jeremy's down here, and I thought he'd brought his little brother to work today. So thank you, and Happy New Year to all of you. I'm sorry.
I just have a question. The significant felony arrest that you were talking about, can you describe that?
Sure. It was a marijuana arrest. Officer Keene stopped a car for a minor traffic violation. And when she approached the car, she detected an odor of marijuana coming from the car. Turned out after a search that she had found a felony amount of marijuana in the car and made that arrest. Unfortunately, the DA's office chose not to prosecute it as a felony. They reduced it down to a misdemeanor within a day of her filing the charges, so it never went to the grand jury, unfortunately. But and she's been extremely proactive. That's the second very similar arrest that she's made. Coming from Virginia Beach in her background, she's really done a great job being out there, eyes seeing, and teaching other officers, some of those things to look for that they haven't particularly had the training in. So maybe not a significant felony arrest in the world of felony arrests, but
Inducted is.
For us, it's unfortunately we're seeing a lot more out there. And the other arrest she had dealt with a synthetic THC product that we really hadn't been seeing here. And I think, frankly, most officers down here would have overlooked that, but she knew of it and knew what to look for. So it's a great learning experience for us as well.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Chief.
Who's up next?
All right, Deputy Chief.
I know you're here somewhere, but.
Or maybe. There we go. Take a little.
All right. Make sure I know how to work this here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Just going to go over, as Chief Ackerman kind of noted at, I'm going to try and go a little quick here. So just to start off with, it's the same kind of data that you're used to seeing from Chief Black. Our year-to-date calls here, you'll see we were a little higher in 2016. We had an abundance of public service calls that year. We actually almost caught last year within about 20 calls there, which is interesting considering the amount of time we were shut down for in the beginning of the year and saw no real call volume. To follow that up, just looking at December individually on here, we were actually a little high in December. We noticed this in the second half of the year. We were ending up a little bit higher most months. Interesting fact this year that we noticed on there is if you look at the fire numbers, we had 23 calls, we had 5 fires. And those are, when we put it in as a fire, that is something that was actually burning, there was actually smoke, there was an actual fire on that event. Doesn't mean a house fire, but it's something's actually burning. That's a rarity down here to have that many in a month in Kildare Hills, much less in Doug. So while things are certainly getting slower this time of year, we're increasing training, we're doing more inspections, and we're also seeing more high acuity calls. This is again just the same information kind of showing that on that pie chart. And then this is just showing the past few years how we tracked through December. Again, you can see we stay pretty consistent there between 14 and 20 calls. This year again, we were just slightly higher. So to that, for our training hours for the month, total training hours of all of our members were 403 hours. This is exceptional. We actually, because of traveling for Thanksgiving and some COVID issues, we kind of canceled our last 2 trainings, or last 2 official trainings of the year. So these hours were picked up kind of by individuals going through our truck checks and not in our typical 3-hour Tuesday nights. And then we had 29 inspections that we completed this month, or this past month. Still maintaining all of our PPE and all of our stuff for COVID. We've still got the public safety building restricted, still doing our daily temperature checks and symptom checks. And we're still working with scheduling for our volunteer firefighter standby to keep our normal response and not overcrowd the building. So the biggest event we had last month was our structure fire on December 6th. This came out at 3:20 in the morning. These 3 pictures are a great example of what showed up first. That night, we were actually staffed with 2 on the engine. So the first person on scene was Officer Keene, who gave great information back, relayed all that information once she got there back to the engine company that was responding. She was shortly followed by Chief Black. They were able to contain this to a single building, a little bit of damage to a building on one side. Actually, the building that was closer to it sustained no real damage, which is interesting in this world that we're in, that the closer building didn't sustain it. But great job by everybody to contain that. Nobody was home at the time of the fire. It was an unoccupied house. Neighbors were home. As you can see, heavy volume of fire when they showed up there. We also, the evening before, had our, a little too fast there, our annual award Zoom. Big thank you to Christian, who helped facilitate that, along with Nancy, who helped kind of create some of the stuff. To that, we had a couple service pins that we gave out, 20 years to Captain Bartolotta, and then 10 years to myself and Firefighter Davis. And these are years with the fire department as a member in the Doug Volunteer Fire Department.
Great, congratulations to that.
Also, we had our Rookie of the Year, Ralph Allison. He has been a real godsend to the station. Gets along with the guys great, gets along with everyone great. Really energetic, kind of brought a whole new life to everybody there. Our peer award, which is voted on by our members, as you can see, this will explain what I was just saying, again, is Firefighter Ralph Allison. Our Volunteer Firefighter of the Year this year was selected as Joel Canino. Joel actually volunteers with the town also to help with some of the beach planning stuff and other things. But again, real solid. We brought Joel in 2 years ago now, and he has continued to grow and continues to provide great service and do great things. Career Firefighter of the Year this year was Master Firefighter Dempsey. Again, can't say enough about how much he's done and how much growth we've seen. So very proud of that one. And then the Chief's Award was actually awarded to Lieutenant Mack. Lieutenant Mack has been a solid rock for the department for many years. So it was just fitting that we honored him that way. So next we'll continue. I know Chief's been doing the CIP 101 stuff. So I'm just gonna kind of continue on with that. And this month we're gonna go into hoses, nozzles, and appliances. So depending on what we're doing determines what hose and what nozzle we'll be using. This is a pretty good photo here that shows you several different sizes of hose and a couple different appliances that we use in the blitz fire that's on the ground there. I think you can maybe see a nozzle on the ground a little ways away there. So as far as the hoses, we chose these three photos. These are the three hoses that we carry shown in these photos. Top left is our 5-inch supply hose. It carries a large amount of water from the hydrant. It's better at carrying more water at lower pressure. Our 1 3/4 hose is in the middle. That's our bread and butter hose. That is the hose that we're going to carry into the burning building. We get better maneuverability and still get a decent flow out of it. And then our 2.5 hose on the bottom right. That is our big water. We need more water when we need it. And we need it a long way away from the engine. It'll handle a little more pressure to get the water where we need it to. So going into that a little bit for our hose replacement, the cost is anywhere from $125 a section. That's going to be for your 1 3/4 to $500 a section, and that's going to be for your 5-inch. Those sections are, so for an 1 3/4, that is a 50-foot section. For your 5-inch, that's going to be a 100-foot section. Again, the three different types, the 1 3/4 and the 2.5, we consider a tack hose. So that means that they are rated up to 400 PSI. Our 5-inch supply is actually only rated to 200 PSI. So again, that's where we get a little different flow and or volume and pressure out of each one. For replacement, they're phased by age and failures. To that, there's no recommended, the manufacturer recommends, I think, 10 years to replace hose. NFPA doesn't speak of it. There's nothing really out there on it. What we kind of follow with that is the biggest product that goes into the makeup, the biggest component in our hose is actually rubber, similar to vehicle tires. And if you look at DOT standards, they'll say 10 years on truck tires. We run into the same thing. The rubber that's in the inner liners on our hoses and provides that flexes just like a truck tire. So we kind of watch that. We're looking for cracking, delamination, things of that nature. Failures come from testing. The testing is required by not only NFPA, but also by the North Carolina Rating Response System, or Response Rating System. And that's how we get our community rating for our fire safety stuff. So to that, they're tested annually. All of our hose is actually tested annually. We utilize a third party for that to help kind of validate our testing that way. But it's tested for 5 minutes at, I believe, 400 PSI. It's got to pass that, and then they look for any leaks anywhere that it's actually stretched out from the coupling. So we get a real good test out of that. And again, when we're replacing it, we like to maintain uniformity and make sure that it interfaces properly. In that, we're looking to make sure that we're replacing hose that will connect to the hose we already own. Another way that we see hose end up failing is when it burns. So this burned hose, I actually have a piece of in the truck, but I couldn't get it to stop smelling like it was a piece of burned hose. This occurred on that structure fire. To give you an idea of how much heat there was, this hose was actually on the side of the building that had the unaffected exposure that's closer. In the time it took them to stretch this hose with only 2 people on trying to get back and charge this line, before they could get the line charged, this hose had basically burned through already. So a lot of heat, thought they had it far enough away. We got it all worked out in the end. Ended up burning up a section of hose, but that is one of the reasons that we may have to replace hose at times. For appliances, this is the other part to it. So our appliances are our nozzles, our deck guns, our monitor devices. You can see there's multiple different ones on here. There's a handheld nozzle that goes on our 1 3/4 line. We also have those for our 2.5. There's a apparatus mounted deck gun. In the old days, you used to be able to take those off and actually deploy those on the ground. Since they've turned them into electronic versions, we can't really do that anymore. So to combat that and still have that maneuverability when we need to get to the backside of a building that we don't have a street on, we now have our 5-inch monitor that's down on the bottom left there, and our 2.5-inch blitz fires, which are smaller monitors that go on our 2.5-inch line. Again, going back to our 5-inch isn't really great for flowing pressure. We can't necessarily get as far away, but we can flow a lot of water through it. Our 5-inch is good to 1,000 gallons a minute, basically. Our 2.5 is good to 500 gallons a minute. For appliance replacement, our cost on those range from $700 for a nozzle. Fortunately, we don't have to replace nozzles very often. And that's going to be for an 1 3/4 nozzle. They come in 2 pieces, so we have to buy both parts when we're purchasing them, to $2,500 for a monitor set, for a 5-inch monitor setup. And again, we don't have 7,000 monitors sitting out there. So the types, again, are 1 3/4 and 2.5 handline nozzles. Those would be the nozzles that you're used to seeing in the pictures of folks flowing. Those flow between 150 and 300 gallons a minute. And then our 2.5 to 5-inch monitors flow anywhere from 350 to 1,200 gallons a minute. Our replacement, again, phased by age. If they fail beyond repair, we can actually repair most of these or send them off and have them repaired if we need to. And then technological advancements. As they begin to age, things get better, things get lighter, easier to maneuver, easier to use. Again, trying to maintain uniformity and interface properly. And for both of these, we generally do a $6,000 per year CIP request. That covers both of those items. We don't, again, going back to the nozzles and monitors, we don't tend to have to replace those as frequently as the hose. We like to kind of cycle hose in so that as it fails, we're not ever sitting on the need to replace an entire fire engine's worth of hose at any given time. So the last thing I have is we did welcome Spencer Thomas. He is our new hire. We'll actually be introducing him in February, with the chief not being able to be here in person tonight. He started Monday. He came in for us, worked at 48, got to meet everybody. So to that, we had a closing date for our process of December 2nd, conducted our candidate physical agility test, or CPAT, on December 14th. 2 days later, on the 16th, we did interviews. When I say we did interviews, we selected 4 candidates from our physical agility test. We did a panel interview with them. That afternoon, we presented our suggestions to the chief. Chief's interview was completed that afternoon, and actually town manager interview was completed that evening. So we were able to expedite the process to get him moving as quickly as possible. And as I said before, his start date was this past Monday, January the 4th. So we are very excited to have him aboard, and he's been a real good fit so far.
Great, congratulations.
Beyond that, if you guys have any questions, if not, thank you for your time.
Thank you, that's a nice.
Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Nice overview on those hoses. Glad we're taking those in small bites, but it's nice to try to understand that, what you guys have to go through, so thank you.
Right, thank you. And Christian, if you're ready, we can take you up next.
I know. I was gonna ask, can you take sections, but then I figure you can. You probably have a nice big hose, you can probably couple it and piece it together if you hurt some of it, right? I decided not to ask.
Can you, if you burnt, the one that burnt, you can't replace, put an end in that, can you?
So on the 1 3/4 hose, not really. You may be able to set it off and have somebody do it, but the sections that you have left with are so short, uniform at that point. The 1 3/4 hose is typically 50-foot length, so we try to keep them at that, and that lets us know how much hose we've got, how far we're in.
Oh, that makes sense.
They're in a
You can measure.
For example, they've got 2 couplings inside, maybe we've got 100 feet of hose inside.
Yeah,
The 5-inch we've been able to recouple in the past.
the ones that come off the fire hydrant. See how much I've learned tonight? Okay. All right. Thank you.
I don't have any fun types of hoses to discuss. I can talk about oysters.
I've thought about it over the years.
Thank you, everybody. Nancy, just a shout out to you for a moment. You won't be able to ask questions while my PowerPoint is up, so as soon as I'm done, I'll switch it back over in case you have questions. I apologize for that technical glitch. So I'm going to start this evening with Chuck Burdick's update from the Dare County Tourism Board meeting that was held in the beginning or middle of December. And some big news is the occupancy and the meal collections have really just kind of gone through the roof, which is really exciting. So I tried to put in some fun graphics here, some little fireworks. The occupancy collections year over year are up 83%, which is incredible. And then for the calendar year, they're up 10%. So even with COVID, we are still ahead of where we were last year. And you can see in the graph there, I know that the numbers aren't very large. I got it from their PowerPoint. But you can see really July, August, September, October, how much occupancy there's been versus previous years. So meals, obviously, overall are still down just a little bit because the restaurants were closed for quite a long time, and there is still a restricted occupancy in restaurants, but restaurants seem to are doing pretty well. October for year over year, they're up 14%, and for the calendar year, they're down 19%. So hopefully they're sort of starting to meet in the middle. The bigger news from all of these great collections is that at the meeting, budget amendment was approved. The tourism board went into this budget year with an incredibly conservative budget. And because of the much higher than expected occupancy tax, they were able to put in an amendment that increased occupancy revenues by $750,000. And this was approved. And so I just pulled a couple. This past one that I showed you was their basic, the summary of the $750,000, 5% of that into the general fund, and then 25% of that went into their special revenue restricted fund. And so they will have some money for grant applications this spring for events that will happen this fall. We won't be applying for one for Jazz Festival because ours from last year will be carried forward. Let me see if there's any other notes. So the other note I got from the presentation was overall the revised budget is a 9.2% decrease from the 2020 actuals, for all you numbers people out there. Continuing with our public information outreach, I feel like I've talked about COVID all year long, but haven't we all? We are still working on public health guidelines, and I did just update this slide after the governor and Dr. Cohen spoke today. And state and local metrics are both trending upwards very quickly. That includes the number of positive cases, the number of hospitalizations, and the percent of positive tests. All those numbers are climbing very rapidly across the state. They're also climbing rapidly in Dare County. The governor did extend the provisions of Executive Order 181 by issuing a new executive order that's 188 that extends those provisions for 3 additional weeks. And those provisions include things like the mask mandate, all of the things that we've had for quite a while, but 181 also instituted the nighttime curfew, and that will also be extended for 3 weeks. And interestingly, I hadn't seen this done yet, the Secretary of Health and Human Services issued a directive, and that's linked on our website now, it's linked on the state website as well, containing immediate actions needed to protect from COVID-19. And many of those actions are aimed at people who are over a certain age or people who have gathered with anyone outside their family, particularly for indoor events, family events where people weren't wearing masks. And part of that message is basically if you were around someone that wasn't your immediate family for a holiday, that you should go ahead and get tested, because you can probably assume that someone in your group has it. And testing is available in Dare County. Vaccine updates. The distribution groups were streamlined as of December 30th to make them a little bit easier to follow. They also were streamlined due to the fact that we've been collecting data this whole time. So during recent spikes, they've been able to kind of pick out who seems to be the most vulnerable. So right now, anyone 75 years of age or older in Dare County can sign up to get a vaccine. That's available at the website you see here. That's also linked on our website and in our e-news. You call or you go online, sign up for your vaccine spot, and they expect to be doing those for about the next 3 weeks. It just depends on how many vials of vaccine they get every week. And we'll continue to update our messaging along with the county as those come out. And we did yesterday at our OBX PIO group, we discussed messaging about not only vaccines in general, but how to communicate in the best way to the public whose turn it is to get a vaccine and how they go about doing that. Just a quick thing, this slide's been in my presentation for a couple of months, but I did just want to update you that even though things are still a little uncertain for 2021, we are planning. Betsy's done a great job updating our summer contracts. So all of the updates are completed. We're waiting for signatures to come back. That is mainly bringing back people who were scheduled for this past summer. Same thing with Jazz Festival. We're working on that. Continuing every other week to meet with the PIOs from the other towns in the county. A couple of things that have happened over the past month. Beach grass plantings have continued. And we also had a really great sound and park cleanup. I have a couple of pictures. I didn't get any really fun pictures this time because we were all doing so much work, but we found a whole lot of toys, just a lot of kids' toys. Obviously, cigarette butts were probably the top thing we found. We found far less shotgun shells than I thought we would, but a lot of kids' toys. Very interesting. And we tracked this. Every team that went out used the Ocean Conservancy tracker. So we actually have a cool graph that shows what types of trash that we found and in what amounts and how far people walked, which is really fun. Secondly, in this kind of recycling green vein, we're still working on the oyster recycling with the restaurants and the North Carolina Coastal Fed. So we're getting pretty good deliveries of oysters from the 3 restaurants in town that are doing frequent oyster roasts. They're dropping them off in the parking lot for us, and one of us is running them down to an oyster drop-off location. Hopefully in future years, we'll be doing this with the help of volunteers, but this got started during a weird time with COVID and also us trying to figure out the logistics of getting it done. But it's really great. The Coastal Federation can use these in building new oyster reefs. And I recently just found out that it's technically illegal in North Carolina to throw oyster shells in the trash. They're supposed to go to a recycling facility. So we're hoping to make it a little easier for people in Duck to do that. And we have set up a section that's just for homeowners who want to bring oyster shells. I do want to talk a little bit about the winter celebration. I don't have any photos up here for that, but I wanted to talk through just a little bit how it's going to look differently this year. And thank you, DC, for mentioning the fire Zoom party. So we switched to a Zoom platform for that. It was pretty fun. It was shorter than the typical party because I don't think anyone can watch a computer screen for 3 hours. So we've come up with an agenda for the winter celebration that we think everyone will like. The winter celebration, for those listening or watching that might not know, it's a chance for the council to recognize members of boards and committees along with town staff members. We typically hold it in January, and we're going to switch to this online format this year. So we have sent save the date invitations via email, and we'll be sending a paper invitation to follow to the invitees. We have decided this year to insert an Outer Banks Restaurant Association gift certificate card. We would love for them to spend it in Duck, but it is good at a variety of restaurants so that we can give a little bit back to our community. And we can continue the spirit of sharing a meal together as we would normally do during the party. And while the program is not completely set in stone yet, we'll definitely include a welcome and toast by our mayor. We'll have comments by our fantastic interim town manager and staff introductions by department heads. And we really hope to focus on some of the newer employees, particularly in public safety, that people haven't gotten to meet face-to-face due to COVID. And we'll have some special slideshows and share some memories of how Duck has grown over the years, because I don't know if you guys believe this or not, but we're quickly approaching our 20th anniversary in 2022. So we'll have some fun graphics there for people to check out. Yeah, so we look forward to that. And I do, just when we send out the email invitations, I have set up 2 practice sessions. So if people are not familiar with Zoom or uncomfortable with it, they can come get a one-on-one practice session with me before the event. Nice. Yeah. And I did just want to mention there, because we didn't have many volunteer events this year, and we are very interested in creating an event specifically for volunteers, kind of moving forward. That's something that Betsy is going to bring forward at the retreat to discuss some ways for us to recognize our entire volunteer crew, some more creative ways where we can get everyone together and they can potentially involve their families. And the last thing I have, I mentioned this last time, the Outer Banks is switching from Regroup to Rave, and it's going to be called Outer Banks Alerts. This is the flyer they're going to use. It's going to go out in their next tax bill, which goes out very shortly. And they're going to pitch that it's starting in February 2021. So their website will be updated. Regroup will still be active for a few months after that, and there'll be a transition time to move over to that. So we'll be, excuse me, we'll be advertising that as well with the county and expecting that we'll have people contacting us to help them switch over. And that is all I have. If you guys will bear with me, I'll switch over. All right, does anybody have any questions?
Christian, we'll be running the winter celebration from this room, correct?
Yes, if that's what you prefer. So Betsy is planning to be here, down here, to run the cameras for you. And if there's any other council members that want to be in the room to give a little speech or toast or comments, you're welcome to do that because we'll be here. You're also welcome to do it from your home. I'll be up in my office at Command Central, kind of running the slideshow and giving people technical support on the back end for the party. Yeah.
So if anybody, I'll be going to be here. If any of the other council want to be in attendance here, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. So you don't even really have to let us know ahead of time. Just you guys can just show up and we'll put you on camera.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Christian.
Right. Christian, thank you very much. Appreciate that overview. Right. Next item we had on the agenda relates to the council retreat. I'd sent out an email maybe a couple weeks ago, I think, just inquiring if there were any specific topics the council members wanted to see. Included in that, we had a draft agenda. We have a draft agenda in your packets tonight for you to consider. One item I've had a conversation with the mayor about is the possibility of moving some of the contracted services at the end of the second day, just sliding them into lunch, something that we could easily cover. It's just really giving you an update. We're talking about the solid waste, landscaping, audit, cleaning, just kind of giving you an idea of where those are at, what we're doing. Seeing if it's something, I know we had just bid out the solid waste and landscaping, But for audit and cleaning, I need to do some research still, but I don't know when the last time we did those things. So, just to give you something to think about if you do want to pursue a different way of looking at those. But that'll give us, allow us to end a little bit earlier in the day or allow us to put something else in those slots. So I did just want to, ask that you take a look at that draft agenda and see if there's anything tonight, if there's any ideas you have that you want to add, topics that are important to you, or if not, we'll proceed as planned in the draft here.
I thought this was great to have to digest. Thank you for the advanced thoughts. And a lot of it does mirror things we've done in the retreats in the past. My only thought was an opportunity perhaps for, while we're in each different segment, for a little bit more, not necessarily a Q&A at the end of it, but maybe a little more interactive with council rather than just presentation. I don't really know how to affect that, but perhaps, for example, let's say Betsy's coming up with some ideas on how to do volunteer. Maybe she's planning on giving us, 3 or 4 things and getting some immediate input, just a little more interactive with council, only to keep, or the public. I mean, because we do welcome the public during those. So that's all. Rather than just having the information come to us, maybe asking for some feedback or presenting a few options and ideas or that kind of thing. That would be my only suggestion. I like the idea of breaking up the last segment. We have questions on surf rescue for sure. We can really get into that topic, and it'd be nice to focus on it. And then also just looking at our audit process will be good. I think everything's great.
Monica, I agree with your suggestion about having more time to have questions and answers and conversation with the department heads about, after they've presented to us. I think that that's something that's been lacking. And then my only suggestion with this agenda is I think surf rescue needs to have its own amount of time. It seems like when we've had presentations about surf rescue, there's just an extraordinary amount of information and potentially a lack of understanding about the service and the expenses. And I think wrapping surf rescue up among 5 other services and having that all happen in 45 minutes is just, I don't think that that's the smartest move. I think that we need to find the time to give surf rescue an adequate amount of time to present, because there sure were a lot of questions and discussions last year about the service.
Joe, Merrick is not going to be here, correct?
Merrick will not be here in person. He will be present via Zoom.
Oh, he will be.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, I don't think anybody needs to be there in person, quite frankly, but I would like to have a broader amount of time, for him to describe his service and to get everybody to get their questions answered. I think the retreat's the time to do it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Nancy. I would almost be nice to see Merrick's presentation a little ahead of time so we can clarify anything we have on it. But, just because there was so much discussion about it at the end of the year and some confusion on his presentation. And yeah, I completely agree.
I think back to Monica's point too, and maybe Joe, on direction to the staff, is tell them basically if they got an hour and 15 minutes, plan on maybe 45 of that being presentation and 30 minutes being Q&A. In other words, don't try and take the whole hour and 15 minutes, just a bunch of slides. I'll leave a lot of time for interaction.
We've been fortunate enough to really get a lot of good information during the year. And so it will be interesting to see, what questions or even sort of, decisions departments are looking at in case they want to get a little feedback from us too. Just a little more interactive.
I agree.
Okay, well, we will
I think the other thing too, and assuming
move
there's going to be
accordingly.
a lot of personal requests this year, I just have that feeling that department heads come prepared in their presentations, for what they're looking to do and accomplish and justification, certainly.
Sure.
This is a starting point for the budgeting process. Good.
Right. We may look for, if we have another like I mentioned before, we're already talking about moving those four, other than surf rescue, into the lunch time frame on the second day. We may also look, if we have another sort of shorter topic that comes up, we may look at doing something similar during the lunch period on the first day as well. So we're sort of keeping our eyes and ears open to see if there's something that might be of interest that we can plug in there. Not for an entire hour, but just something that maybe covers 20 minutes, 30 minutes during that lunch period.
So don't we already have the girl from the Currituck Bridge project coming for lunch on the first day?
And we had zapped that that was from last year.
Oh.
And there's really nothing as far as an update on that.
Okay.
So that's something that we'll look to find. It could be something of a similar nature, not related to the Mid-Currituck Bridge, but just something like that. That's a significant thing that may be of interest. That sort of thing is what we might be targeting. So. Right. Well, thank you for your input.
We might want to have some sort of a lunch discussion about where we're at with COVID in that February timeframe and where it's going to take us. And we might have a better perspective of, how many more months ahead of February we're going to be impacted as a town. So there might be some good discussion perhaps along those lines. We can keep that open though, but.
All right.
I just want to say hooray on the occupancy tax numbers. That's amazing. It definitely is reflected by all the folks in town, and on the Outer Banks. But boy, we as a community at large have been so fortunate to have the interest and the economic vitality that we've had, and just and pretty much safety. I know it's been a tough time lately with the holidays, but just so grateful for not having to lose. Potentially just having huge losses, and look at those numbers. I mean, pretty amazing.
Right. And once again, you guys are doing a spectacular job with the segues tonight. So I'll wrap up the manager's report with, just looking at our financial statements. I believe all of you received a copy of Teresa Osborne's work this month and putting those together, and I just can't stress enough the value that she's really provided our organization during this time frame here. It's really been essential for us to keep on track with the financials. Did just want to highlight a couple odds and ends. Just real quickly, she's already made some notes after she and I talked through some of the highlights of this. The key takeaways here on the revenue side of things. As mentioned, just extremely high numbers, up over $200,000 at the same time last year for the occupancy tax. Land transfer tax, which relates more to the sales, up almost $100,000 from last year.
Crazy.
Sales tax up almost $50,000. And just, you can see the other odds and ends, even with the building permits, up almost $30,000. So almost across the board, revenues have been very strong for us this year. So again, not something that we were necessarily anticipating at the beginning of this fiscal year. I know we had a lot of conversations during last year's budget about that, but very nice to see that. On the expense side, just wanted to, I guess highlight that right now, midway through the year, we have exactly halfway through with this report. We're just a tad under 52% on the expense side. And, while that is over half, one thing to recognize with that is that we have already paid out our large debt, our $1.2 million debt service related to the beach nourishment. So that has already been paid out. And even with that, we're still only at 52%. So we also seem to be in very good shape on that side of the house as well. So I think financially, I hope the council's very pleased with where we're at, because again, we had a lot of question marks going into this year. And I think things at the moment, at least, are looking very good as far as having a successful year financially. And Mayor, that's all I wanted to highlight on that. And that concludes manager's report section of the agenda.
Joe, could I just ask one thing on this monthly cash balance tax summary page? I just noticed it because I just started looking at it. Was that supposed to be on the counts across the top there? Was that supposed to be is that supposed to be December 31st, 2019 at the top? Or was that supposed to be November of 2020? The percent change? I'm just trying to understand what I'm looking at, the differences between these two columns. They both say 12/31/20.
I think it's year over year, and I probably should be 2019.
It appears that, I'm just looking at the numbers, and it appears to me that is likely year to year.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just noticed that I couldn't understand the top, so I thought I'd get a quick clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Go on to item number 9, the mayor's agenda. Just a few items here. The chairman, mayor's, others meetings have started up again in 2021. We had one on Tuesday morning. The sole subject is basically COVID-19. We were anticipating hearing from the governor, this week, as we did on the extension of the declarations. A lot of discussion about the last couple of weeks. We had a record week and then followed by another record week. COVID is basically community spread right now. And it's mostly tied right now to gatherings from the Christmas and New Year's holidays. So hopefully there's an anticipation that we'll see a little bit of a downturn on that. Also, a lot of discussion about vaccinations. And they basically have administered about 400 to basically healthcare workers and, the real priority individuals. It's interesting. Sheila was telling us that basically the vaccines are a week-to-week basis, and you've got to use 100% of your vaccines this week to get your vaccines for the following week, which is kind of interesting. So in other words, if you get 400 and use 200, you're probably not going to get your allocation for the following week. So in other words, you can't really bank on your vaccines. Everything coming down here is the Madeira, of course, because there's no capability for maintaining the Pfizer at 90 degrees below zero. And the challenge, and I think they started today, and I understand was very successful, the vaccinations of the 75 plus population. I heard it was running very smoothly. It's going to take a while to vaccinate that population. I think there's thousands of people right now in the Outer Banks, 3,000 to 4,000 that may be in that category. And it's open to any North Carolina resident. So if you live in Raleigh and you want to come down to the Outer Banks and you got a North Carolina driver's license, you can schedule, of course, it's all by schedule, but you can get your vaccine here. Currituck started, and I guess they're doing it actually by no appointments, and it's a drive-through. And I haven't heard much more about that, but Dare County is everything by appointment. They opened it up on Monday. They only had 8 operators, and they got overwhelmed basically in the call center. And so, you know, it's going to be a continuing process for a period of time to get through this population. In fact, Sharon and I are scheduled for Monday morning at 9:45. So, and there's the first 3 are today at the Bomb Center, and then Monday at the Rec Center in Kildopa Hills, and then I think Wednesday at the Fredenza Center down in Hatteras Island. And of course, then they'll continue to schedule. The logistics is not as simple as doing it in the hospital where they have all the hospital workers to administer it, and people have got to relax for 15 minutes. So them being mostly doctors and nurses, they can go in their car and sit and there's nothing going to happen. But with the aged population, you've got to basically get the shot and then rest for 15 minutes, and you've got EMS and the sheriff standing by in case there's any major issues. So they've done a good job, I think, in the county. I'm sure they'll get some criticism for scheduling, but it's to me a Herculean task that they're going through. So a lot of good information came out from the conference call. I have a league executive committee on the 11th. We have one second Monday of every month. I talked when Bobby was talking about beach nourishment, I did have a long conversation yesterday with the executive director of BIWA, Kathleen Riley, and she really wants some coastal involvement in trying to work with the league for the first time to try and advocate some of these goals. So being on the board and being a coastal community, I told her I would certainly support that effort. And we're working with 1 or 2 lobbyists looking to engage them with the league to lobby on behalf of setting up these residual funds year in and year out. So I think that'll be a good effort. And she was also supportive, Joe, appreciative, Joe, that Sandy attended, and you had a couple of people online for the BIWA conference. Looking forward to the winter celebration. It won't be the same as prior years, but it'll be fun. And just for anybody say, I just saw the note come up, but the chamber is having that State of the County this year. I think it's the 20th or 21st, Lori. I'm not sure what day it is, but I think that something just came out now. Yeah, I think an email or something came out. Yeah. So,
Is that gonna be Zoom I'm taking?
It'll be Zoom, yeah. It's gonna be Zoom. So I plan to, attend that Zoom meeting, and it's always fun to watch Bob Woodard. So, and with that, that's all I have. We'll go on to item number 10, council member agenda. And starting with Mayor Pro Tem, Monica Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just mention that I was appointed by the Board of Commissioners to join the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau again. And I did that several years ago and really enjoyed it, my time on the board. So I'm excited to join them again. And my first meeting will be in January, and be interested. I think Christian did a really nice job of summarizing. So if there's anything in particular that anybody wants to hear, but I will plan on reporting monthly to everybody about that. And I'm also serving, and have for a while, on the Government Access Committee, which I've enjoyed. That's the current TV, and there's been a lot of progress since I've joined that board. But if anybody else is interested in being on that board rather than me, I would really be interested in hearing about that, or I'm sure all of us would.
Monica, I'm happy to take over that slot. When do they meet?
They've been, it was really just not even monthly, I'll be honest, particularly with COVID. But I sat on a whole lot of, I did a lot of interviewing, and we do have a nice new producer that's sort of second in command to Skip. And I'm so happy because he was really holding that thing together with Benny Baldwin, and but they announced, his, after he's gone through all of his onboarding, he's finally gotten to work. And one of the first things that they produced and collaboration with the Park Service was a really nice 150th anniversary of the Hatteras Lighthouse. But it was a really nice piece. It was a half hour long, and you know, some of the younger folks I know thought a little too much content, but you know, very educational. And I really recommend anybody taking a look at it. You don't have to, you can fast forward if you get a little bored, but the historical, the way they put it together was lovely. I really told the story, had great visuals, great old pictures of old lightkeepers, as well as the move and, you know, of the lighthouse, and just, you know, a really nice, Bob Woodard's in it, of course, you know, just a really nice job, about a half hour. And I, you know, had it playing in the background, so I didn't sit there riveted to my screen because I was doing other things, but there's some really great content. And I'm excited about what the current TV can do and really take it to the next level after a lot of, just a lot of, you know, waiting to get things done. So yeah, Nancy, that would be great. Do we have to have a motion on that?
Well, let's see if anyone else is interested.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Mayor Apso.
I'm out.
Good luck, Nancy.
Right. No, it's very interesting, and you meet such nice people. I mean, that's what I love about these boards, that you are working with John, great, now I can't think of his name, but from the Coastal Studies Institute. He's
McCord.
Thank you, John McCord. Of course, Tim Sweeney. I mean, you just meet such somebody from every town is on there, much like the Visitors Bureau. So you really make some nice connections. And anyway, great. I make a motion that we, if we don't have to do anything.
I think we should do a motion.
Hopefully there's not much more to it. Then I make a motion that Nancy take over the government access channel and be our liaison for Duck.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mayor votes aye. Mayor Pro Tem Thibodeau.
Aye.
Councilmember Mooney.
Aye.
Councilmember Whitman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Hi.
Get to work.
Thank you, Nancy. I
You're
think
welcome.
you're really
Monica,
going to
just
love it.
forward me the information or
Yeah, I'll get you connected with Skip, and they're going to have a big party for me to say goodbye, I'm sure. No, kidding.
They're already celebrating you leaving.
I just came up with this during, you know, council members' agenda. So anyway, thank you, Nancy, for being willing to take over.
Congratulations on being on the tourism board again. I know you did a great job last time.
Thank you.
You'll probably be assistant treasurer to up to president again. Thank you, Monica. Councilmember Mooney.
Nothing from me.
Councilmember Whitman.
Nothing.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
I don't have anything to offer tonight, and I'm sorry for that. It's just very difficult to find the words after what we've all witnessed today in the Capitol.
It's 9 o'clock.
I just want to send my wishes that everybody in public service and public safety is safe tonight. You know, after this just disgraceful attack on our democracy today. So.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, we'll go to item number 11. Additional public comments? There are none. Any other business come before the council? With that, we'll go on to, and I'll entertain a motion for going into closed session. I'll ask John if he would help us with that.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The council needs a motion to enter closed session as provided by General Statute 143-318.11A3 in order to confer with the town attorney regarding matters protected by the attorney-client privilege and to preserve that privilege, and 143-318.11A6 in order to discuss one or more confidential personnel matters.
Mayor Pro Tem Thibodeau, would you make the motion then?
I'd like to make a motion for the motion that was read by John Leidy.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, roll call vote. Mayor votes aye. Mayor Pro Tem Thibodeau.
Aye.
Councilmember Mooney.
Aye.
Councilmember Whitman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
We are now in closed session. Ask our town attorney if he would report back.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The council did consult with the town's attorney regarding matters protected by the attorney-client privilege and also discuss some confidential personnel matters. Some actions were taken in closed session, but nothing further needs to be reported at this time.
Thank you. Could you please assist us with some direction on the one action item we have?
Yes, sir. I think at this time, the council needs a motion to hire Andrew Havens as the new town manager for the town of Duck, pursuant to the terms of the contract that was approved in in closed session.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that the town hire Andrew Havens. I had to put my notes away. Didn't want to get it wrong. As our new town manager, pursuant to the terms and conditions in our proposed contract.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mayor votes aye. Mayor Pro Tem Thibodeau?
Aye.
Councilmember Mooney?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitman?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
Wait, we need that.
Hold on.
Thumbs up.
Nancy?
I'm really making a good impression on the new manager.
Let's guess what his first action will be.
Nancy, did you hear the motion?
No, the audio just came on right now.
Okay, the motion was to hire Andrew Havens per the terms and conditions of the contract. And we're doing a roll call vote now unless you have any discussion. No. All right, then I'll call for your vote. Councilmember Canvas. The motion is passed unanimously 5-0. And along these same lines, Joe and Christian, what we'd like to do is put together a press release, probably for release tomorrow afternoon. We understand that there'll be communications in his employment tomorrow, and so we'd like to get the release out as quickly as possible. John, would you like to review that release?
I'd be happy to. I'm around. I can do it.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to take a look at it if you want also. Okay. So, is there any other business come before council this evening? I thank all the staff for staying in here tonight. Appreciate it. And if there's no other, I'll remind council our next meeting will be the regular meeting on Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021 at 6 p.m. And for that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
6 p.m.
Did I say 7?
No, you said 6. I'm just trying to remember 6.
Well, that's okay. That's 2020 right there.
This agreement's to be signed by the mayor, so.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion on the floor?